Chapter 1639. Ji Tianqing, Jiu, and Taihao Yunqi walked side by side on the wide Jade Road. This straight and wide road led from the southern city gate to the plaza in the center of the city. After passing through the plaza in the center of the city, they continued to walk toward the northern district, where they saw an exceptionally sacred and magnificent palace complex. This was Taihao Palace. There were very few pedestrians on the Jade Road, and the ground was very clean and tidy. Many statues and stone tablets were erected on both sides of the road. Streets and alleys crisscrossed through the city. Rows of tall buildings and pagodas, as well as many exquisite palaces, were arranged in neat rows, making for a very grand sight. As the three walked, Jiu explained the situation of Taihao Kingdom to Ji Tianqing. This is Taihao City. 60% of the entire kingdom's martial artists are gathered here, and there are close to 6 million people. There are many spirit veins and precious lands outside the city, and there are many villages and tribes scattered around. Many rare races live here. Although it's called a kingdom, it's actually a small world. It's a secret realm that has existed since ancient times, and it's connected to Shenwu continent. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked doubtfully, along the way, I saw that most of the commoners in the city are at least at the primordial spirit realm, and there are almost no ordinary people. Are the 5 million martial artists in the city all geniuses and powerhouses selected from the 6 great empires? Jiu shook her head and explained, not all of them, except for a few who came from the lower realms. Most of them are originally citizens of the kingdom. Ji Tianqing was surprised and asked in disbelief, the natives here actually have such powerful martial talent, and all of them can reach the primordial spirit realm? Jiu revealed a proud expression and nodded. Although not all of them can reach the primordial spirit realm, they are close. After all, this is Father's kingdom. It has the most abundant cultivation resources in the world, and it's also protected by Father's divine power. Not to mention humans, even a bird or a demon beast can become an essence soul realm demon supremacy after a few hundred years of nourishment from divine power. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with some emotion, it's truly blessed by the heavens. As expected of a kingdom, it's a miracle. By the way, why are there so many rare races living in the villages and tribes outside of Taihao City? Jiu thought for a moment and explained, it said that in ancient times, there were tens of thousands of races on the continent. However, after a huge calamity and upheaval, many races perished. By the time Father took control of Taihao's kingdom, the various races were on the verge of extinction. Father was merciful, and he could not bear to see the ancient times, so he brought some races that were on the verge of extinction to the kingdom. After tens of thousands of years of reproduction, the races that were about to disappear are now thriving again. Ji Tianqing nodded again and smiled. Divine Lord Taihao, this is a good move. God by God. By God by Jiu. By Jiu by God. The was. The two of them chatted as they walked. Before they knew it, they had passed through the northern city district and arrived at the gates of the vast divine palace. Only at close range did Ji Tianqing truly realize how majestic and divine Taihao Divine Palace was. 2 lifelike golden dragons were carved on the 1,000-foot-tall palace gates. The 4 golden words Taihao Divine Palace were carved on the lintel, exuding the domineering aura of a sovereign who looked down on the world. Below the palace gates, the Divine Palace guards wore golden armor. They all had sabers at their waists and golden halberds in their hands. The insignia of Taihao Divine Kingdom was embroidered on their chests. When Ji Tianqing's group of 3 stepped through the palace gates, the guards on both sides knelt down and bowed, their postures extremely respectful and pious. After entering the Divine Palace, Taihao Yunqi parted ways with Ji Tianqing and Jiu. He left alone to report to God Lord Taihao and take care of some matters. Jiu led Ji Tianqing through the majestic palaces and into a palace called Rui. This resplendent palace was Jiu's personal residence. It was her personal residence. Inside and outside the palace, there were more than 100 golden armored guards and more than 100 maids and divine servants. Jiu settled Ji Tianqing in a guest room on the first floor, not far from the guest hall. Ji Tianqing meditated in the room and waited patiently for an entire afternoon. Only when night fell did Jiu come to find him. Tianqing, I just reported to Godfather. I will now take you to see him. Okay, thank you for your trouble. Ji Tianqing nodded and followed her out of the room. A few moments later, Jiu led him deep into the palace and into a bright and spacious study. The study was rather large and luxuriously decorated. It was a dazzling sight of gold everywhere. Under the northern wall, there was a large purple jade desk and a large purple jade throne inlaid with gems. On the desk were several ancient texts, a bronze incense burner, and a mysterious black stone half the height of a person. The black stone was oval-shaped and made of an unknown material. It flickered with white light and its use was unknown. Ji Tianqing looked around and saw that there was only him and Jiu in the study. He asked, Jiu, aren't you taking me to see the Divine Master? Why are you in the study? Jiu chuckled, Tianqing, don't worry. Godfather is always in seclusion. Even I can't see his real body. Usually, when I report to Godfather, I communicate with him through the divine stone. With that, she formed a spell with both hands and shot out a dazzling white light into the mysterious black stone on the desk. Swoosh! The mysterious black stone lit up with a dazzling white light and condensed into a tall and mighty figure. This was a middle-aged man wearing a golden robe. He was tall and sturdy and had a dignified face. His clothes were simple and plain, but his thick eyebrows revealed a domineering aura. His deep eyes contained wisdom that could see through everything. Ji Tianqing recognized him at a glance. This white-robed man was martial god Taihao. Of course, this was only the projection of martial god Taihao's clone. Jiu looked at martial god Taihao with a smile. She bowed and reported, Godfather, Jiu has brought Tianqing here. Martial god Taihao looked at her kindly and waved his hand, Jiu, you can leave now. Don't let anyone come close. Godfather has something to talk to him alone. Jiu was startled. She pointed at the tip of her nose and pouted, Godfather, even I can't listen. Of course. Martial god Taihao nodded slightly. His tone was kind but contained an unquestionable authority. Jiu pouted and nodded, all right, Jiu will leave now. With that, she quickly left the study and cast a spell to activate the defensive formation of the study. Chapter 1640. The secret room was so quiet that even the drop of a needle could be heard. Ji Tianqing and martial god Taihao's clone looked at each other in silence. After a long while, Ji Tianqing finally spoke and broke the silence in the secret chamber. Greetings, Divine Master, he greeted martial god Taihao with a cupped fist salute. Martial god Taihao finally came back to his senses. His expression was complicated as he said slowly, you're too similar. Not only do you look the same, even your bloodline and aura are the same. Ji Tianqing had been mistaken for martial god Taihao a few times before, so he wasn't surprised by martial god Taihao's reaction. He smiled and asked, Divine Master, are you talking about Kenshin? Of course. Martial god Taihao nodded and looked at him with sparkling eyes. He asked, if your cultivation wasn't so weak, I would have thought that he had returned. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and smiled meaningfully. He asked, if he really did return, how would you react? Martial god Taihao was clearly taken aback. He looked at Ji Tianqing playfully and said, although I don't believe that someone who has been dead for 1,000 years can come back to life, I don't believe that someone who has been dead for 1,000 years can be reborn. However, if he really does come back to life, I'll be happy for him. Ji Tianqing nodded and thought to himself, in Kenshin's memory, Kenshin and martial god Taihao were good friends. After all, Kenshin had taught martial god Taihao before. They had no grudges or conflicts of interest. Martial God Taihao should be trustworthy. Martial God Taihao sighed and said with a wry smile, "Unfortunately, you're Ji Tianqing. You can only be Kenshin's successor. You're not him. Besides, I can guess what you're thinking. You don't need to test my attitude. If I was hostile to you, you would have disappeared a long time ago. How could you still be alive?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "I've made a fool of myself in front of the Divine Lord. But I still want to ask, why did the Divine Lord summon me?" Martial God Taihao said in a deep voice, "Firstly, I would like to meet an old friend from 1,000 years ago. You might not be him, but you look very much like him. Secondly, I owe him a favor and have never had the chance to return it. If I return this favor to his successor, perhaps he will feel gratified in the underworld." Martial God Taihao looked at Ji Tianqing sternly and said solemnly, "Ji Tianqing, I know everything that has happened in the past 6 months since you entered Mount Godseal. Your talent is extraordinary, and your future is promising. As expected of the successor of Kenshin. Although you are now the #1 God's disciple, a God's disciple is only equivalent to my disciple in name. You can't be compared to the Son of God. Now, I want to take you in as my last disciple. If you agree, you will be my only disciple, and your status will be equivalent to the eldest son of God." Ji Tianqing frowned when he heard Martial God Taihao's words, and a look of shock flashed across his eyes. He knew very well that although Martial God Taihao had 99 children, he had never taken in a single disciple in his entire life. If he agreed, he would become Martial God Taihao's only disciple, and his status would instantly rise by more than 10 times. Martial God Taihao's last disciple would definitely be one of the most respected figures in the Taihao kingdom. Even in the entire Shenwu continent, he would be one of the most respected figures in the world. If Ji Tianqing agreed, then he would have a meteoric rise, reaching the heavens in a single bound. From then on, he would be able to reside in the Taihao kingdom and enjoy the best treatment and cultivation resources. With Martial God Taihao as his backer, almost no one would be able to threaten him. However, Ji Tianqing still shook his head and refused after weighing the pros and cons for a moment. "Lord Deity, Kenshin gave you pointers in the past, but unfortunately, he left this continent before you could return the favor. This matter caused you to feel regret in your heart. Now, you want to return this favor to me. I can understand your feelings, and I am very grateful for your decision. However, I am very sorry that I cannot agree to it." Ji Tianqing's tone was very calm, but it was also very stubborn and resolute. Martial God Taihao frowned and revealed a look of disbelief. He asked, "Ji Tianqing, have you really thought it through? You actually rejected me so straightforwardly? I know that your current situation is very bad. Not only are you enemies with the Outcloud Empire, but you are also being targeted by the powerhouses of the Ghost Clan. If you agree to this matter and become my last disciple, all of your problems will be easily solved." Ji Tianqing shook his head and smiled. A treasured sword's edge is sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. Back then, Kenshin roamed the Shenwu continent and slaughtered his way from the west to the east. In a short 30 years, he became a saint. What he relied on was not the protection of powerhouses, but the sword in his hand and his tenacious heart. As Kenshin's successor, I naturally want to imitate him. No matter what difficulties or dangers I face, I will solve them myself. Martial God Taihao listened quietly and stared at him in silence for a long time. After about 10 breaths of time, Martial God Taihao revealed a gentle smile and nodded. "You really are too much like him. How great would it be if you were him? Since you have such aspirations, I will not force you. Of course, I will still deal with the matter of the Outcloud Empire. The 6 great empires have existed for thousands of years in peace and stability. I will not allow anyone to break this balance and cause chaos in the divine kingdoms." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and asked, "Since the Lord Deity already understands the cause of this matter, how will you deal with it?" Martial God Taihao said in a dignified tone, the current chaotic situation was caused by Emperor Outcloud's greed. If he had not been so greedy, why would he have fallen into your trap and given up on the Outcloud Empire? I have already ordered the eldest son to lead the Divine Might Legion to the Outcloud Empire to capture Emperor Outcloud. He will be suppressed in the Divine Kingdom's endless black prison and suffer for 100 years. Ji Tianqing said calmly, Emperor Outcloud made a grave mistake and committed such a sin. The Lord Deity is only imprisoning him in the prison for 100 years. You are truly merciful. Martial God Taihao glanced at him and smiled. Ji Tianqing, you probably don't know about the endless black prison. Ask Jiu when you have the chance. In addition, the great Emperor Chu Yun was once my disciple and a rare martial sage expert. I can't kill him because of this, can I? Letting him reflect in the endless black prison for 100 years is already a severe punishment. Ji Tianqing saw that martial God Taihao had made up his mind and did not say anything else. He naturally hoped that martial God Taihao would give the order to kill Emperor Outcloud to prevent future troubles. However, this was not realistic. There were only a dozen martial saints in the entire Divine Kingdom. Killing one meant one less. Chapter 1641. Martial God Taihao had already concluded what would happen to great Emperor Chu Yun, so Ji Tianqing could not say anything. He thought to himself that he might become a martial saint in 100 years. By then, even if great Emperor Chu Yun wanted to take revenge on him, he would not be afraid. He thought for a while and thought of another question. He asked, Divine Master, great Emperor Chu Yun will be locked in the boundless dark prison to reflect on his actions for 100 years. What about the Chu Yun Empire? Without a martial saint, there will be more chaos. Martial God Taihao smiled and said confidently, I have already made arrangements for this. You don't have to worry. The first Divine Son's strength and experience have been honed. He can take on a heavy responsibility. In the next 100 years, the first Divine Son will temporarily take over the position of Divine Emperor and control the entire Chu Yun Empire. Ji Tianqing was relieved. He stopped asking about the Chu Yun Empire and changed the topic. Divine Master, you mentioned the ghost race just now. I believe you know about the Glacier Divine Mine, right? Martial God Taihao nodded slightly and said calmly, for nearly 10,000 years, the ghost race has been holed up in the North Underworld Mountain. They have never shown themselves and outsiders have not been able to enter. The ghost race has not been active on the continent for so long that the other races have almost forgotten about their existence. I did not expect them to leave the North Underworld Mountain and go to the Glacier Divine Mine to cause trouble and kill so many miners. Fortunately, you disguised yourself as a divine servant and took care of the two ghost race that caused the disaster. You also chased away the Demon King hiding in the glacier. Otherwise, the trouble in the Glacier Divine Mine would have lasted for a few more months until the second Divine Son personally went to investigate. Ji Tianqing's body shook. His eyes were filled with shock. Divine Master, you even know that I disguised myself as a divine servant and secretly killed the two blood gods. He thought that he had done it secretly. He did not expect martial God Taihao to expose him. Only now did he believe that martial God Taihao was like the eye of a god. He looked down on his territory and could see through everything. Martial God Taihao smiled and said in a dignified tone, in my territory, as long as I want to know, I will know. The Cold Ice Martial Lord, who was in charge of the Glacier Divine Mine, deliberately concealed the news. He could not deal with the disaster in time and did not report it in time. This god has already given the order to punish him severely. That devil monarch of the ghost race hiding in the Arctic abyss had long fled upon hearing the news. Now, the Glacier Divine Mine has returned to normal. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment, then asked, Divine Lord, since the Ghost Clan has been hiding in the North Underworld Mountain for nearly 10,000 years and has never moved around the continent, why are you still here? Why did they leave the North Underworld Mountain and run to the Glacier Divine Mine to cause trouble? Martial god Taihao looked at him playfully and said meaningfully, "Not only did a few Ghost Clan experts run to the Glacier Divine Mine to cause trouble, my spies have also found out that a large group of Ghost Clan experts have left the North Underworld Mountain and are moving around in my territory. As for why they left North Underworld Mountain and started to move around the continent, you should know better than I do. Their target is you." Ji Tianqing frowned and fell silent for a moment before saying, "Divine Lord, to tell you the truth, when I first came to the Shenwu continent from the Tian Xian continent, I was chasing after the ancestral demon god. You should have heard of the legend of the ancestral demon god, right?" Martial god Taihao frowned, and a look of disbelief flashed across his eyes. He asked in astonishment, "The ancestral demon god? You chased it all the way to the Shenwu continent? How is that possible?" Of course, this god knows about the legend of the ancestral demon god. The ancestral demon god was the primogenitor of the ancient demon race, and it was also one of the reasons for the ancient war. During the ancient war, countless deities and powerhouses from various races were massacred by it. It led 3,000 blood gods and wantonly massacred the people and powerhouses of various races, causing the ancient races to wither and perish. Today, 99% of the ancient races have perished, and only a few hundred races are left. But didn't the ancestral demon god fall during the ancient war? After the ancestral demon god fell, the remaining demons on the Shenwu continent were encircled and annihilated by the various races. Those that escaped the net retreated to Dark North Mountain and changed their names to the Ghost Race. They never dared to appear in the world again. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Originally, the ancestral fiend god had fallen in the ancient war. But no one expected that a trace of its spirit remained, and it slept in the blood river of the demon race's sacred land for 30,000 years. After that, the demon king tried everything to revive the ancestral demon god. Although I killed the demon king, I couldn't do anything to the ancestral demon god, and it escaped here." After listening to Ji Tianqing's explanation, martial god Taihao came to a realization and nodded. "So that's how it is. A trace of the ancestral demon god's spirit was not destroyed, and it slept for 30,000 years before being reborn. This is simply inconceivable." When he thought of this, martial god Taihao looked deeply at Ji Tianqing, and a thought flashed through his mind like lightning. The ancestral demon god managed to preserve a trace of its spirit and was reborn after 30,000 years. Kenshin was revered as the king of gods back then. Did he really fall? Will he be like the ancestral demon god and be reborn after 1,000 years? Just as martial god Taihao was deep in thought, Ji Tianqing spoke. "God Lord, the ancestral demon god has most likely fled back to Dark North Mountain. It must be conserving its strength and quickly recovering its vitality. Once it recovers, it will definitely lead all the demons to sweep through the Shenwu continent and cause another bloody catastrophe. I suggest that you act as soon as possible and kill it before it recovers. Otherwise, it will be too late to act when it matures in the future." Martial god Taihao nodded and said solemnly, "Ji Tianqing, I will seriously consider your suggestion. I will also send the Shenwei Legion to clean up the ghosts that have intruded into my territory. However, Dark North Mountain has been a forbidden area since ancient times, and it is extremely dangerous. Even my Shenwei Legion will find it difficult to enter that forbidden area, and it will be even more impossible to wipe out all the ghosts. Also, I am currently in seclusion to comprehend the divine art. I will not be able to come out for a while, and I will not be able to act personally." Ji Tianqing immediately understood what martial god Taihao meant and could not help but frown. Martial god Taihao is currently in seclusion. A martial god like him can stay in seclusion for decades or even centuries. He cannot personally deal with the ancestral demon god, and the Shenwei Legion cannot attack Dark North Mountain. The only thing he can do is kill all the demons that enter the territories of the 6 nations, but this will not affect the foundation of the demons. When he thought of this, Ji Tianqing let out a long sigh. I can only hope that the ancestral demon god will not recover its peak strength within 100 years, and it will not attack Dark North Mountain. Chapter 1642. Ji Tianqing hated the demon clan to the core and wished he could kill the ancestor demon god as soon as possible to prevent future troubles. However, martial god Taihao had never dealt with the demon clan before and had no enmity with them. Naturally, he would not be as anxious as him. Moreover, martial god Taihao was in seclusion and would not come out in a short period of time. Ji Tianqing could only drop the matter and did not mention it again. Martial god Taihao continued, Ji Tianqing, the previous kingdom exchange conference will be held in the ruins of God. Every exchange conference was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for God's disciples from different countries. After you go to the ruins of God, you must perform well. Perhaps you will have an incredible harvest. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood and asked, what is the great opportunity that the God Master is talking about? Martial god Taihao was silent for a moment before he opened his mouth to explain, this will have to start from the origin of the ruins of God. The ruins of God originated from the ancient era and appeared after the ancient war. Legend has it that it was the world of the gods, but it was destroyed in the ancient war and became a ruin. There are also some legends that say that it is the resting place of the ancient gods and there are countless tombs of the gods buried there. There is a mysterious messenger who guards the ruins of God for his entire life. Everyone calls him the Old Man of God. Every time the Kingdom Exchange Conference is held, the Old Man of God will secretly observe it. If there is an outstanding talent or a peerless genius, the Old Man of God will appear and choose this genius to enter the ruins of God. In the past few thousand years, there have been more than 10 peerless geniuses who were lucky enough to be chosen by the Old Man of God and entered the ruins of God. After these geniuses entered the ruins of God, they all had shocking gains. They either obtained ancient divine items or the inheritance of an ancient god. In the end, these geniuses became the most dazzling experts in the continent and basically all reached the martial sage realm. After listening to martial god Taihao's explanation, Ji Tianqing came to a realization and nodded, I see. The ruins of God is equivalent to the graveyard of the ancient gods and there are countless divine Tao inheritances buried there. In the past few thousand years, only a dozen geniuses were chosen by the Old Man of God and were lucky enough to enter the ruins of God. In that case, the Old Man of God's appearance is extremely rare. He might not appear in this Kingdom Exchange Conference. Martial god Taihao nodded slightly and said, exactly. Whether or not the Old Man of the godly ruins will appear depends on whether or not there are any peerless geniuses among the God's disciples of the three divine kingdoms. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a calm expression, if that's the case, then we can only let nature take its course. This matter cannot be forced. Martial god Taihao was just reminding him. He did not have high hopes. Then, he changed the topic and said, Ji Tianqing, I heard from Jiu that you are looking for your lost wife. Exactly. Martial god Taihao said gently, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack if you want to find her on your own. Why don't I issue an order for the spies of the various empires to help you find them? You'll definitely be able to reunite with your wife soon. Ji Tianqing bowed and said, thank you for your kindness, Divine Lord, but there's no need for that. I've already found her tracks. I'll be able to see her and reunite with her during the Kingdom Exchange Conference. Martial god Taihao raised his eyebrows. His eyes flickered with astonishment. Is your wife a god disciple of the other two kingdoms? Ji Tianqing did not hide it. He admitted it openly. That's right, my wife is now under martial god Luo Shui. Martial god Taihao would find out about it sooner or later with his ability. He might as well be honest with him, which made him seem more upright. Martial god Taihao frowned slightly and asked in a deep voice, so you won't be returning to Mount God Ceiling after the Kingdom Exchange Conference? Ji Tianqing looked at him calmly and said solemnly, to be honest, I'll try to reunite with my wife. I might not be able to stay on Mount God Ceiling. However, I'll remember the Divine Lord's kindness and care. If the Divine Lord needs me in the future, I'll do my best to repay the Divine Lord's kindness. Martial god Taihao was silent for a while before he smiled and said in a playful tone, "I'm only taking care of you because of Kenshin. Why would I need you to repay me? Besides, it'll be at least a few thousand years before I need you." With martial god Taihao's strength and status, he was one of the 3 giants of the Shenwu continent. Why would he care about Ji Tianqing's repayment and help? Ji Tianqing also understood this point, so he didn't say anything else. Martial god Taihao continued, "Everyone has their own aspirations, so I won't force you. If you want to go to Luo Shui Kingdom, go ahead. After all, you're a descendant of Kenshin. If Luo Shui knows about this, he'll definitely take good care of you. Of course, whenever you want to return to Taihao Kingdom, Mount God Ceiling will always open its doors to you." Martial god Taihao's tone and expression were calm and indifferent. He seemed very tolerant and open-minded. Ji Tianqing bowed and cupped his hands. "Many thanks for the Divine Lord's help." Martial god Taihao nodded slightly. You must remember not to forget your original intentions. Don't ruin Kenshin's reputation. Alright, you may go." After he finished speaking, martial god Taihao's clone projection gradually dissipated and soon disappeared. The dazzling white light disappeared, and the mysterious black stone became dim. The study quieted down, and the light returned to normal. Ji Tianqing quietly pondered for a moment before turning to leave. When he walked out of the study, he saw Jiao standing outside. She had a gloomy expression on her face as she pouted and counted the time with her fingers. When she saw Ji Tianqing come out, she immediately revealed a joyful expression and hurried over to welcome him. "Tianqing, you're finally out. Are you done talking to father? What did you talk about?" Jiao raised her head and looked at Ji Tianqing. Her small face was filled with anticipation, and her big round eyes were filled with excitement. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "The Divine Lord told me about the Kingdom Exchange Conference. He mentioned the ruins of God and the messengers of ruins of God. He asked me to perform well." Jiao nodded and said in a clear voice, "Even if father didn't tell you about this, I was going to tell you. The ruins of God is the world's #1 forbidden area. Every martial artist in the world dreams of entering the secret realm. You must perform well and obtain the favor of the old man of the ruins of God. Other than this, what else did father tell you?" Ji Tianqing saw that her desire for knowledge was too great. He couldn't bear to disappoint her, so he said, "The Divine Lord also told me about the Chu Yun Empire. He wants to send the eldest divine son to take over the Chu Yun Empire. He also wants to capture the Chu Yun Great Emperor and imprison him in the endless black prison to make him repent. By the way, Jiao, can you tell me about the endless black prison?" "Endless black prison?" Jiao's eyes widened. The smile on her small face disappeared, and her eyes were filled with fear. Chapter 1643. Jiao only revealed one sentence about the endless dark prison and did not mention anything else. Where was the endless dark prison? How terrifying was it? What dangers were there? He had no answer to any of these questions. However, Ji Tianqing knew that the great Emperor Chu Yun would not have a good life in the next 100 years. He and Jiao left the study and walked back to their residence. Along the way, Jiao pestered him with many questions to find out about his conversation with martial god Taihao. In Jiao's opinion, martial god Taihao did not allow her to eavesdrop and was being so mysterious. They must have talked about some secrets. Her strong curiosity made her want to get to the bottom of this matter. Ji Tianqing had a headache and could only brush her off with a few perfunctory words. He then returned to his residence to rest. After a night of recuperating and meditating, his mental state had recovered to its peak, and he only felt refreshed. The God's kingdom is indeed blessed by nature and envied by others. Meditating here for a night is equivalent to cultivating in Mount God bestowment for 3 days. Ji Tianqing made a comparison in his heart and the result was shocking. The next morning, he found Jiu and said that he wanted to leave. He had achieved his goal of coming to the God's kingdom and there was no need for him to stay. Jiu frowned in confusion and asked, Tianqing, you just came to the God's kingdom. Why are you in a hurry to leave? The God's disciples of Mount God Bestowment have just left and it will take them at least 20 days to reach the God's ruins. If you leave now, you can reach the God's ruins in an instant and reach 20 days earlier than them. Don't you still have to wait for them? If that's the case, why don't you stay in the God's kingdom and leave when the time is near? Tianqing frowned and thought about it. He did not say anything. Jiu pulled his arm and continued to persuade him, Tianqing, the God's ruins is very strange and dangerous. If you go alone, you might not even find the place. It's not easy for you to come to the God's kingdom. You should go and see the scenery. Even if you don't go sightseeing, you can stay in your room and cultivate. It's faster than cultivating in the lower bound. In the end, under Jiu's insistence, Tianqing decided to stay in the God Kingdom for half a month. Seeing that he had finally agreed to stay, Jiu was especially happy. She hurriedly pulled him out of the hall. Tianqing, let me take you to see the scenery of the Divine Kingdom. Regardless of whether Tianqing agreed or not, Jiu pulled him out of Rui Palace. Under Jiu's orders, the captain of the guards brought over a snow-white winged Pegasus for the two of them. The heavenly horse was a divine steed. It was tall and holy, and there was not a single strand of variegated hair on its body. It emitted a faint silver light. Jiu brought Tianqing onto the Pegasus. The Pegasus spread its pure white wings and flew into the sky. Shwa! The heavenly horse was flying in the sky above Taihao City, gracefully circling and dancing in a leisurely manner. Jiu pointed at the buildings in the city and took the initiative to introduce them to Tianqing. Tianqing, look over there. That's the market, the largest trading market in the city. Many martial artists trade there. Some rare treasures often appear there, as well as many interesting things. Seventh brother and I often go there to take a look. Over there is the tower, the tallest building in the city. It was built by the royal craftsmen of the Divine Palace. It only took 3 days to complete, and over there, the largest palace is the 100 Clans Assembly. Usually, if there are any major events of the 100 clans outside the city, they will report to the 100 Clans Assembly, Jiu continued to introduce, feeling a little excited. Ever since she first met Tianqing in the Xian Pin Gate, she felt that Tianqing was different from the rest. He was very special. This inexplicable feeling gradually deepened as she interacted more with Tianqing. Because of this, she tried her best to persuade Tianqing to stay. In the depths of her heart, she always wanted to spend a few more days with Tianqing. Perhaps she could understand him better. Tianqing listened quietly. Occasionally, he would ask a question or two, and from time to time, he would be amused by Jiu. Unknowingly, the Pegasus carried the two of them out of Taihao City and flew out of the city. Outside Taihao City, there were rolling mountain ranges. They were basically deep mountains, great lakes, and thousands of feet-high peaks. In some of the flatter mountain peaks and valleys, there were a few villages and tribes scattered around. Although these villages and towns were not big, they had a very long history. The houses and buildings had a special style and style. The small villages only had a few dozen families, and the population was only 100 or 200. The bigger towns had thousands of houses and buildings, and the population was as high as 10,000. Tianqing stood on the back of the Pegasus and looked down at the many villages and tribes. Indeed, he saw many strange races. There was the mermaid clan who lived by the lake. They had a human body and a fish tail. There were the ancient tree shepherds who lived in the lush forest. They had the body and limbs of a big tree, but they had the head of a human. There was also a centaur tribe who lived on a hillside facing the sun. There were more than 200 people in the tribe. They all had the body of a horse, 4 hooves, and a tail, but their necks were no different from humans. There were also the rare Miluo lion men, silver star wolf men, ancient willow tribe, flower spirit tribe, and so on. Ji Tianqing had never heard of most of the races. After seeing them, he felt that it was an eye-opener. There were only a few races that he had seen in the ancient books. However, this was the first time he saw them with his own eyes. About 2 hours later, the Pegasus flew deeper into the mountain range. Jiujiu pointed at a 2,000 feet high peak in front of them and said to Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, that's the Moon Fox Mountain, the territory of the Moon Fox tribe. The people of the Moon Fox tribe, regardless of their gender, are very handsome and kind. They are good at making a kind of cake called the moon mark. It's very delicious. I used to visit them often." Ji Tianqing smiled and said jokingly, "You want to eat their cake, right?" "Yes." Jiujiu nodded and said with a smile, "I'll take you to try it. I believe you'll like it too." While they were talking, the Pegasus carried the two of them to the sky above the Moon Fox Mountain. This 2,000 feet high peak stood in the middle of the mountains. It was very beautiful and had its own good fortune. The middle of the mountain was covered by clouds and mist. The peak of the mountain was surrounded by a sea of white clouds. It was like a fairyland. The mountain peak with a radius of more than 30 miles was relatively flat. There were dense forests and grasslands growing on it. A huge five-colored light shield covered the peak of the mountain like a sky curtain, protecting the territory of the Moon Fox tribe. When the Pegasus flew close to the five-colored light shield, 6 Moon Fox tribe guards in silver armor came forward to welcome them. Ji Tianqing took a closer look. The 6 Moon Fox tribe guards were all young men. They were tall, handsome, and had long silver hair. Each of them had a handsome face, a pair of pointy white ears, and a pair of silver eyes. Their auras were also somewhat feminine. Chapter 1644. The 6 guards of the Moon Fox tribe recognized Jiujiu. They did not need to look at Jiujiu's identity token. They quickly opened the five-colored light shield and bowed in unison. "Greetings, Your Highness. Welcome to the Moon Fox tribe, Your Highness." All the guards greeted Jiujiu respectfully with smiles on their faces. Jiujiu waved at them and rode the Pegasus to the grassland at the peak of the mountain. Dozens of old houses and mansions were scattered on the flat green grass. They were all made of marble and inlaid with a large number of moonstones. At the northern end of the grassland, there was a 3-story silver palace at the edge of the forest. The palace was not big, but it had a unique design. It exuded a sacred and solemn aura. At the top of the palace, there was a statue of a mythical beast. Ji Tianqing glanced at it and vaguely saw that the white jade statue seemed to be an exceptionally handsome fox. While he was looking around, many people of the Moon Fox tribe had already gathered around him. Most of them were wearing long silver robes. Regardless of gender, age, or gender, they were all tall and slender. They were either handsome or beautiful. When the people of the Moon Fox tribe saw the Pegasus on the grassland, they all looked at Jiujiu. Everyone looked excited and expectant. They all knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Jiujiu. "Greetings, Your Highness. Greetings, Your Highness." Jiujiu was already used to this. She smiled and waved her hand. "Everyone, please leave. I'm just here to take a look." The people of the Moon Fox tribe stood up, but they did not want to leave. They stood far away and looked at Jiujiu and Ji Tianqing with smiles. Jiujiu smiled at Ji Tianqing and explained, "The people of the Moon Fox tribe are too friendly. Every time I come, I have to disturb the entire tribe. It makes me feel a little embarrassed." Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled. That's why the ancients summed it up well. Those who take advantage of others are soft-hearted. Jiujiu was stunned. She smiled awkwardly. "It seems like what you said is true. No wonder I feel embarrassed." That's easy. You just have to bring them some small gifts every time you come, Ji Tianqing said with a smile. Good idea. Jojo nodded in agreement. The two of them chatted as they walked towards the house 1,000 feet away. It was a 2-story house with walls made of silverstar stones with fine veins. There were already some mottled traces of the vicissitudes of life. 2 silver foxes were engraved on the 2 light golden doors, giving off a somewhat demonic aura. The walls of the 2-story building in the courtyard were inlaid with rows of moonstones, forming a mysterious and special pattern that flickered with silver light. Jojo pointed at the small building and introduced it to Ji Tianqing. That's Moon Dream's home. She makes the best pastries in the entire Moon Fox tribe. Ji Tianqing smiled and asked, looks like you've been here a lot. Jojo smiled and explained, more than 10 years ago, I met Moon Dream when I was traveling around the God Nation. She provoked a group of demon beasts deep in the mountains when she was picking herbs. She was surrounded and injured, and her life was in danger. I saved her and sent her here. She let me stay here for a few days to thank me. She even made many pastries for me. Jojo's face was full of smiles as she talked about the past. There was a hint of pride in her words. Ji Tianqing lowered his head and looked at her with a smile on his face. He also felt a little warm in his heart. He could tell that Jojo and Taihao Yunqi had different natures. Although she was the most honorable goddess and the most favored princess, she did not have Taihao Yunqi's arrogance and aloofness. She was still very simple and kind. Occasionally, she would be a little muddle-headed. She was very cute. All in all, she would be very popular no matter where she went. In this martial Dao world where people's hearts are sinister and dark everywhere, I'm afraid only someone with Jojo's status can remain untainted by the world and maintain a pure and kind heart. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, and he felt a little emotional. At this moment, a series of footsteps came from behind them. Ji Tianqing and Jojo stopped and turned around. They saw a woman from the Moon Fox clan in a long silver dress. She was escorted by 4 guards in silver armor and she was walking quickly toward them. The Moon Fox woman looked to be in her early 30s. It was hard to tell her actual age. She had a seductive figure and a beautiful face. She was dressed in a luxurious robe and wore a silver crown on her head. She also held a 2-foot-long scepter in her hand. Ji Tianqing could tell that this Moon Fox woman's strength and temperament were extraordinary. She should be the leader of the Moon Fox tribe. The Moon Fox woman came closer and looked at Jojo respectfully. She bowed and said, "Greetings, Your Highness. It is the Moon Fox tribe's honor to have Your Highness here again." Jojo raised her hand and said with a smile, "You don't have to be so polite, Silver Moon Priestess. I'm just here for a walk. You don't have to accompany me." In the Moon Fox tribe, the Grand Priestess was the leader with the highest authority. Silver Moon bowed again and said yes to Jojo. She then looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Your Highness, may I ask who this distinguished guest is?" "My friend. I brought him to see the scenery," Jojo said with a smile. Silver Moon's eyes flashed with shock as she sized up Ji Tianqing. In her opinion, someone who could be called a friend by Jojo must have an extraordinary status. He must be someone as important as a god's son or a goddess. Although Ji Tianqing was only at the primordial soul realm, he looked calm and had an extraordinary aura. Silvermoon couldn't see through him at the moment, so she bowed slightly and greeted him, expressing her welcome. Ji Tianqing only nodded slightly in return and didn't say anything. After a while, the Silver Moon Priestess left with her guards. Jojo led Ji Tianqing to the front door of the house. She pushed the door open and stepped into the yard. A beautiful woman with a graceful figure in a silver silk dress was weaving in the courtyard. When she saw Jojo and Ji Tianqing enter, she quickly stood up and bowed in surprise. "Your Highness, why are you here?" Jojo nodded with a smile and said, I'm here to see you. I also brought my friend to try your cooking. Then, she introduced Ji Tianqing. Tianqing, this is Moon Dream. Moon Dream bowed to Ji Tianqing and exchanged a few pleasantries. Then, she pulled Jiu and said eagerly, Your Highness, since you're here, I'll make some pastries for you later. Also, I'm planning to make a dress for you after I'm done. Oh. Is that so? Let me see. Jiu was pleasantly surprised. She followed Moon Dream into the living room to see the unfinished dress. Ji Tianqing stood alone in the yard and looked around. Chapter 1645. Old Ji, let me out. Qian Yu's voice suddenly rang out. It sounded anxious and excited. Ji Tianqing immediately stopped in his tracks and furrowed his eyebrows slightly. He secretly used his divine thought to ask Qian Yu, what happened? Qian Yu hesitated for a moment before it said in a strange tone, Old Ji, did you come to a strange place? Ji Tianqing looked around and explained, I'm in the Moon Fox tribe of the vast divine kingdom. I heard from Jiu that this is an ancient tribe that originated from ancient times. Judging from the style of the people and the architecture of this tribe, it is indeed a little special. Qian Yu was silent for a moment before it changed into an excited tone. It said expectantly, Old Ji, you're in the divine kingdom and in an ancient tribe? Let me out quickly. The scenery in the divine kingdom must be beautiful. I want to see it too. I think I heard you say something about delicious food. I want to try it too. Qian Yu's change in tone made Ji Tianqing feel that something was wrong. Don't you need to cultivate in seclusion? Why did you come out at this time? Qian Yu said sarcastically, cultivating all day long will make my brain stupid, okay? I also need to rest and relax. Old Ji, you won't be so cruel to me, right? Ji Tianqing knew its character and knew that there was something wrong with it. He said in a serious tone, there must be something wrong. Tell me honestly, what do you want? Qian Yu hesitated for a while before it told him the truth. Old Ji, I don't know what's going on either. I vaguely feel that this place has something to do with me. Let me out and I'll see for myself. Then I'll know what's going on. Ji Tianqing turned his head to look at the only palace in the tribe. He stared at the fox statue at the top of the palace and observed it for a while. Ever since he came to the Moon Fox tribe, he noticed that there were fox pictures and statues everywhere in the tribe. The fox was not an ordinary demon beast. It was very majestic and had a bit of a celestial aura. After hearing Qian Yu's words, he also felt that something was wrong. After considering for a moment, he nodded in agreement. I can let you out, but you must behave yourself and don't cause trouble for me. Of course, you still don't believe me. Qian Yu, of course, promised. Ji Tianqing was relieved and opened the exit of the sword world. Shua! With a flash of icy blue light, Qian Yu flew out of the sword of burial of heaven. At this moment, it did not reveal its 300-meter-long true body. Its body had shrunk 1,000 times, and it was only the size of an ordinary fox. Its entire body was emitting an icy blue brilliance, and its 12 furry tails almost covered half of its body. After landing on the ground, it looked around with a cunning look in its eyes. Ji Tianqing was just about to remind it not to run around when Jiu and Moon Dream walked out of the room. They were talking and laughing as they walked into the courtyard. Tianqing, let's sit in the living room and talk. What's this? Jiu was talking to Ji Tianqing when she suddenly noticed Qian Yu, and her eyes lit up. Moon Dream also saw Qian Yu, and her body shook. She stared at Qian Yu with her eyes wide open. However, before they could see Qian Yu's face clearly, Qian Yu flew out of the house and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing frowned. He was about to send a voice transmission to Qian Yu to call it back. Jiu came up and asked curiously, Tianqing, is that little beast your pet? Ji Tianqing nodded. She looks quite cute. Why haven't I seen her before? Jiu stuck her head out and looked around. There was some anticipation in her eyes. Moon Dream's expression was complicated as well. She peeked out secretly, and her heart was filled with doubts. However, she was not familiar with Ji Tianqing, so she was too embarrassed to ask. Then, the three of them entered the living room and sat down. Moon Dream personally brewed tea for Ji Tianqing and Jiu. She also brought some spirit fruits before going to the kitchen to make some pastries. The tea was the Moon Fox Clan Star Spirit Tea. It tasted refreshing, and one would have rolling spirit chi after drinking it. The spirit fruits were also a species unique to Mount Yaoyu. They were very attractive and contained wisps of star power. After Ji Tianqing ate the two spirit fruits, the star power merged into his body and subtly tempered his body. After all, he had cultivated the galaxy body tempering art and could absorb the star power to temper his body. The spirit fruits on Mount Yaoyu were very beneficial to him. Unfortunately, he was worried that Qian Yu would cause trouble, so he was distracted and could not focus on refining the star power. About an hour later, Moon Dream finally finished her work. She brought a plate of fragrant pastries to Ji Tianqing and Jiu. There were 8 crescent-shaped pastries on the simple silver tray. Each pastry was light silver and emitted bits of starlight. They were like the moon that had shrunk millions of times. The pastries were very exquisite. Even the texture was very particular. They also contained rich star power, which was very beneficial to cultivators. Jiu had been thinking about it for a long time. She eagerly picked up a pastry and tasted it. Ji Tianqing did not stand on ceremony and started tasting the moon mark. Moon Dream looked at the two of them expectantly, waiting for their comments. When the two of them were satisfied and full of praise, a smile bloomed on her face, revealing an expression of pride and honor. However, just as Ji Tianqing and Jiu were tasting the delicacies and Moon Dream was blissful, there was a sudden exclamation. "Oh my God! Everyone, look! What's going on? The divine fox has appeared." A sudden clamor sounded in the air above the grassland. Ji Tianqing, Jiu, and Moon Dream were stunned. They hurriedly walked out of the living room and into the yard. The three of them looked toward the center of the tribe and saw the only palace in the tribe emitting starlight. Many Moon Fox clansmen in silver and white dresses were flying toward the palace quickly. More and more clamorous noises came from all around the palace. The originally peaceful Moon Fox tribe suddenly became lively and noisy. "What's going on?" Jiu frowned and looked at Moon Dream in confusion. Moon Dream was also confused. It seems like something happened in the temple. Could it be that Qian Yu got into trouble again? Ji Tianqing had a bad premonition and frowned. He only thought for a moment before flying into the sky and flying toward the temple. "Let's go and take a look." Jiu and Moon Dream quickly followed him and flew toward the temple. In the blink of an eye, the three of them flew thousands of feet away and arrived at the entrance of the temple. There were already more than 200 people gathered outside the entrance of the ancient temple. Almost all the Moon Fox clansmen were alarmed. The holy and solemn silver temple was enveloped in a dazzling silver light. Chapter 1646. More than 200 Moon Fox tribesmen gathered outside the temple, discussing fervently. Everyone craned their necks to look into the temple, their faces full of doubt and shock. "That's strange. Why would the temple suddenly light up and release such a strong divine power? Could it be that the fox god has shown his spirit? Could it be that our tribe's sincerity has moved the fox god? Look, the source of the divine light is the fox god statue. Don't worry, the high priestess and the guards have already entered the temple to check on the situation. There will be a result soon. I wonder if it's a blessing or a curse for something like this to happen in the temple." Ji Tianqing, Jiu, and Moon Dream were even more confused when they heard the crowd's discussion. Even if they asked around, no one would be able to explain the cause and process of the incident. They did not know what was going on. Just as everyone was discussing, 2 guards escorted the Silver Moon Priestess out of the temple. The Silver Moon Priestess' expression was very serious. Her face was as cold as ice, and there was a hint of anger between her brows. However, she suppressed her anger and maintained a dignified demeanor. She stepped over the marble steps and went straight to Jojo. "Your Highness, something happened in the shrine. I'm sorry to have disturbed you." "I'm deeply sorry." As she spoke, the Silver Moon Priestess bowed to Jojo. Jojo frowned and asked with concern, "Silver Moon Priestess, this temple is the Moon Fox tribe's place of faith. It has always been peaceful. How could something happen? What the hell happened? Can I go in and take a look?" The Silver Moon Priestess did not answer directly. She glanced coldly at Ji Tianqing and said calmly, "Little Highness, this is very strange. I'm afraid it has something to do with your friend." Jojo was even more confused. She turned to look at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Silver Moon Priestess, what is going on?" The Silver Moon Priestess took a deep breath and explained in a low voice, 100 breaths ago, an ice-blue demon beast barged into the temple. After the guards found it, they wanted to chase it out of the temple so as not to disturb the ancestors of our clan. Who would have thought that the little beast's speed was so fast that it actually dodged the guards' chase and entered the statue? It even swallowed the summoning moon divine stone in one gulp. I've already asked the guards to investigate. Someone saw the demonic beast flying over from Moon Dream's house. What? Jojo, Moon Dream, and the others opened their eyes wide in disbelief. Ji Tianqing frowned and a touch of helplessness flashed in his eyes. He thought to himself, "Damn Qianyu, just now he promised me that he wouldn't get into trouble. I didn't expect that in just a short while, it would cause such a huge disaster for me." He didn't know what the divine moon stone the Silver Moon Priest was talking about. However, the Silver Moon Priest and the rest of the Moon Fox clansmen were shocked and furious. Seeing everyone's reaction, Ji Tianqing could also guess that the divine stone of the summoning moon was definitely something extremely important. After all, this temple was the place of worship for the Moon Fox clansmen. It was a sacred place that could not be desecrated. The statue and the divine stone of the Moon Fox clan were also the sacred objects of the Moon Fox clan. The Silver Moon Priest looked at Jojo and said in a low voice, "Young Highness, to be honest, if this young master was not your friend, I would have already ordered him to be arrested. Our clan has always believed in the ancestors. Even when we were on the verge of extinction, we did not forget to protect the statue and the divine moon stone of the ancestors. To us, nothing is more important than the statue and the divine moon stone. Now that something like this has happened, I implore Young Highness to deal with it impartially." The Silver Moon Priest's tone was very solemn. After she finished speaking, more than 200 Moon Fox clansmen knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Jojo. "Your Highness, please uphold justice for us." Everyone's tone was filled with grief and anger. It was obvious that if Jojo wasn't present, these angry Moon Fox clansmen would have already attacked Ji Tianqing. Jojo also felt troubled and said, "Silver Moon Priest, don't be anxious. Let's go in and take a look first. I believe that my friend will not have any ill intentions towards the Moon Fox clan." After that, she pulled Ji Tianqing up the stairs and walked towards the entrance of the temple. The Silver Moon Priest suppressed the anger in her heart and followed them into the temple. As for Moon Dream, she could not enter the temple without the permission of the High Priest. She could only wait outside the door with her clansmen and wait anxiously. Ji Tianqing and Jojo stepped through the door and entered the vast and bright temple. The temple, which had a radius of 100 feet, was decorated with the unique features of the other clans. The floor was paved with marble and inlaid with all kinds of colorful gems to form mysterious patterns. 16 thick and sturdy pillars stood on both sides of the temple and were painted bright silver. The walls on both sides of the temple were carved with lifelike reliefs of all kinds of strange and rare spirit beasts. At least a few thousand spirit beasts were facing the north of the temple and bowing with sincerity. And in the north of the temple, there was a tall altar. At the top of the altar, there was a statue of a spirit beast that was 100 feet tall. It was a spirit fox that was silver in color and looked very lifelike. Its appearance was majestic and its appearance was demonic. Its aura was mysterious and ethereal, and it even had a hint of an immortal spirit. Without a doubt, this spirit fox statue was the ancestor that the Moon Fox clan worshipped. Originally, this statue was made of special materials and had a powerful divine formation around it, so it should be glowing brightly. But now, the entire statue was dim and lifeless, like an ordinary stone. It was as if all the spirit chi and divine power had disappeared. There was a ball of icy blue light lying quietly on the shoulder of the spirit fox statue. Ji Tianqing knew that it was Qianyu. It was curled up into a ball and lying on the shoulder of the statue. It was sleeping soundly and was even snoring rhythmically. A wry smile appeared on Ji Tianqing's face as he thought to himself, "Isn't this damned stupid fox usually quite sly? After causing such a huge mess, not only did it not escape from the temple, it even dared to sleep on the statue. How am I supposed to explain this?" Even though this was what he thought, he could guess that there had to be a reason for this. He released his divine sense and carefully examined Qianyu for a moment before discovering something. There was a fist-sized silver ball of light in Qianyu's body, which was exuding divine power at the same rhythm as its breathing. The vast divine power surged into its body and quickly strengthened its body and soul. With its current strength, it was unable to withstand such terrifying divine power, so it had fallen unconscious. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this. At the very least, Qianyu was safe for the time being. Chapter 1647. To Ji Tianqing, as long as nothing happened to Qianyu, everything would be fine. But the Silver Moon Priestess's face didn't look too good. Her anger was getting worse and worse. Not only did Qianyu swallow the god stone, but he was also sleeping on top of the statue. This was an insult to the Moon Fox clan's ancestors. The Silver Moon Priestess couldn't hold back her anger any longer. She glared at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Young master, please give my clan a reasonable explanation." This. Ji Tianqing hesitated for a moment. He looked around and finally fixed his eyes on the tall statue of the fox god. He carefully observed the statue, sizing it up from head to toe. Suddenly, his eyes flashed and he had an idea. The Silver Moon Priestess saw that he was silent and became even angrier. She asked coldly, "Your pet has caused such a big trouble. Don't you feel sorry for it? If that's the case, then don't blame me for not giving you face. Men, take down the demonic beast that blasphemes the ancestors' dignity." At this point, the Silver Moon Priestess couldn't care less about Jiujiu's presence. She also didn't care that Ji Tianqing was Jiujiu's friend. If she didn't take down the demonic beast, she wouldn't be able to face the people of the Moon Fox clan. Hearing her order, 4 guards in silver armor immediately flew up to the altar to capture the sleeping Qianyu. "Wait." Ji Tianqing finally spoke. He waved his hand and stopped the 4 guards in their tracks. He looked at the Silver Moon Priestess with a serious expression and shouted, "Silver Moon Priestess, you are the leader of the Moon Fox clan. How can you be so stupid? How disappointing." "What?" The Silver Moon Priestess was stunned. She stared at him coldly. Jiujiu and the 4 guards were also stunned. They didn't understand what was going on. Ji Tianqing put his hands behind his back and said proudly, "Silver Moon Priestess, do you know what it means to worship the Lord Yi? You keep saying that the Moon Fox clan has been worshipping the ancestor god for generations, treating the divine Fox clan as their lifelong faith and not allowing anyone to profane it. But now, the ancestral god had appeared, and the Fox god had come to the Moon Fox tribe. Yet all of you turned a blind eye to it and couldn't even recognize the descendant of the first god. Aren't you ashamed? The Silver Moon Priest was stunned by his words, and his body stiffened on the spot. What did you say? Is that demonic beast the ancestor god that my clan has worshipped for generations? Ha ha ha. Do you know what kind of punishment you will have to bear for speaking nonsense and slandering our ancestors? Obviously, the Silver Moon Priest thought that Ji Tianqing was just making things up to help Qian Yu. She didn't believe Ji Tianqing's nonsense at all. She turned her head to look at Jiujiu, cupped her hands and bowed. She said in a serious tone, "Your Highness, this young master has slandered and blasphemed the ancestors of our race. Please forgive me for being unable to forgive him. Now, Silvermoon is going to capture him and punish him in public." The Silver Moon Priest could not take it anymore. Even if Jiujiu was present, he would immediately order for Ji Tianqing to be arrested and punished in public. Jiujiu did not expect things to turn out this way. She hesitated. But she only hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. Silver Moon Priest, I don't think Tianqing would spout nonsense. He must have his reasons for saying this. Why don't you give him a chance to explain himself? If he really did offend the ancestors of the Moon Fox clan, I will not protect him. Since Jiujiu had spoken, the Silver Moon Priest could only nod and agree. Alright, I'd like to see how he can justify himself. The Silver Moon Priest glared at Ji Tianqing, his eyes cold and sharp. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. He still had that mysterious look on his face. He said in a low and serious tone, "It was a coincidence that I came to the kingdom of God. It was even more of a coincidence that I followed Her Highness Jiujiu to the Moon Fox clan. But I believe that there is a thread of fate that led us to this place. Perhaps the decline of the Moon Fox clan and the piety of worshipping the ancestors of the Moon Fox clan moved the heavens and gave us the opportunity to manifest our ancestors. That's right. That little ice blue beast is my pet and companion. Its name is Qian Yu. And its origin is the legendary heavenly fox." When the Silver Moon Priest heard this, he frowned and his eyes became complicated. Jiujiu blinked her big bright eyes and looked at him expectantly. She had a vague premonition that Ji Tianqing was mysterious and extraordinary. Even his pet was not simple. Ji Tianqing pointed at the ground and said in a serious tone, "From the moment Qian Yu and I stepped into the Moon Fox clan's territory, we sensed a special aura. To Qian Yu, there was a mysterious magical power that attracted it. It was like a family member calling it home. So, in a moment of excitement, it followed the call of the mysterious magical power and barged into this temple. As for what happened after that, it was all logical. Because it is the descendant of the Moon Fox clan's ancestors." These impassioned words were powerful and resonant, causing the blood of the 4 silver-armored guards to boil with passion. Even Jiujiu was affected by Ji Tianqing's words, and a smile appeared on her small face. She was deeply gratified and expectant. The Silver Moon Priest's expression also changed. She was bewildered and hesitant. She looked at Ji Tianqing and then at Qian Yu, who was curled up in a ball. In the end, she shook her head and said in a low voice, "This is only your one-sided story, and it is an exaggeration. According to the records of my clan's history, the ancestors of the Moon Fox clan disappeared thousands of years ago. My clan's people have searched the entire Shinwu continent, but they have not found any traces of the ancestors, let alone their descendants. No matter what you say, I will not believe it. How can your pet be the descendant of my clan's ancestors?" Ji Tianqing suddenly smiled. His smile was profound and unfathomable. "That's right. There are no traces of the Moon Fox clan's ancestors on Shinwu continent, but Qian Yu did not come from Shinwu continent." Jiujiu hurriedly nodded when she heard this. "Silver Moon Priest, I can testify to this." The Silver Moon Priest fell silent. She looked at Ji Tianqing with a complicated expression and then at Qian Yu, who was curled up in a ball. Her emotions were in a mess, and she became even more hesitant. At this point, Ji Tianqing pointed at the fox god statue and said, "Silver Moon Priest, take a good look at your ancestors. Count how many tails they have." The Silver Moon Priest frowned and said in an unhappy tone, "My clan has worshipped the ancestors for generations, and I have served them for more than 100 years. How can I not know this? The ancestors are the noblest of foxes, and they have 12 tails." Ji Tianqing's lips curled up into a smile. He stretched out his hand and shot out a golden light, grabbing the sleeping Qianyu. They could only be worshipped and not seen with their own eyes. Qianyu was the moon, she. Yu. Moon Chu Yu. Was her moon Yu. She. The Silver Moon Priestess wanted the divine moon stone back so that Ji Tianqing could leave with Qianyu. But Ji Tianqing would never agree to that. "Silver Moon Priestess, you're being unreasonable. Qianyu is the descendant of the moon fox god. You have been worshipping the moon fox god for generations. Now that it is back, it is your piety that has moved the moon fox god. This is a joyous occasion for the moon fox god. As for the divine moon stone, it is the moon fox god's treasure. Or, it was left behind by the moon fox god." Qianyu swallowed the divine moon stone. "You can say that it is returning to its rightful owner." Ji Tianqing looked at the Silver Moon Priest with a serious expression and analyzed the situation in a serious tone. The Silver Moon Priestess was dumbfounded. She stared at Su Ping, stuttering. You shameless bastard. I have never seen someone as unreasonable as you. You can't tell right from wrong. That divine moon stone is the moon fox god's treasure. Your pet swallowed the divine moon stone. How am I being unreasonable?" Ji Tianqing handed Qianyu to the priestess. "From now on, Qianyu is no longer my pet. It is the moon fox god. Didn't you say that the moon fox god has been worshipping the moon fox god for generations? It is time to test you. The moon fox god is here. Serve it well." With that, Su Ping turned around and was about to walk out of the temple. The Silver Moon Priestess held the sleeping Qianyu in her arms. She did not know what to do. If she really had to worship Qianyu as a deity, she wouldn't be willing even if she was beaten to death. But Ji Tianqing had thrown Qianyu to her. She did not know what to do. Helpless, she turned to look at Jiu and gave her a pleading look. Jiu pouted. She wanted to help, but she could not. The Silver Moon Priestess felt a headache coming on. She shouted to Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Ji, please wait." Ji Tianqing was just pretending to leave. He immediately stopped and turned around to ask, "What's wrong? Don't you want to serve the moon fox god? Is the moon fox god's devotion to the moon fox god all an act?" No. Of course not. The Silver Moon Priestess shook her head. "Then you must serve it well. If you don't take good care of them and don't serve them well, then you'll be committing treason and offending them," Ji Tianqing said. He turned around and was about to leave. The Silver Moon Priest panicked and hurriedly shouted, "Young Master Ji, please forgive me for my previous offense. I was only anxious, I just want you to take your pet away. It does not matter if it is the descendant of our moon fox god. It is not suitable for it to stay here. However, the divine moon stone is very important to us. Please keep it." "I see." Ji Tianqing frowned. He thought for a moment and then shook his head. "I am afraid that is not possible. I just talked to Qianyu. It said that the divine moon stone is its ancestor's relic. It has begun to merge with its soul and blood. If you take the divine moon stone by force, you will kill Qianyu. It is the descendant of our moon fox god. It will be our future guardian. Are you sure you want to kill it? Ah. The silver moon priestess was stunned. She murmured in disbelief. How can this be? What should I do? Simple. Ji Tianqing said righteously. Qian Yu can stay with the divine moon stone. You can serve it well and help it grow into the moon fox god. Chapter 1649. Ji Tianqing's two choices made the silver moon priestess feel extremely aggrieved. She didn't want to accept either choice. If she could turn back time, she would rather offend Jiujiu than let Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu enter Mount Yaoyu. Unfortunately, it had already happened and there was no turning back. Young Master Ji, is there no third choice? The silver moon priestess frowned at Ji Tianqing, her eyes full of pleading. Ji Tianqing shook his head with a regretful expression. I'm sorry, I have no choice. The silver moon priestess lowered her head in silence. After a long consideration, she made up her mind. In that case, I choose to let Qian Yu and the divine stone stay. Obviously, she would rather leave Qian Yu in Mount Yaoyu than lose the divine stone. Ji Tianqing seemed to have expected her to make this choice. He nodded calmly. Since the silver moon priestess has made her decision, then so be it. But I have to remind you that Qian Yu has never left my side. If I'm not by its side, it won't be used to it and its temper will be very bad. With its temper, it will most likely tear down this temple. After all, this temple is dedicated to it. It will also destroy the entire Mount Yaoyu, destroy all the buildings, and even beat up the people of the Moon Fox clan. In addition, it is still growing and needs to consume a large amount of spiritual stones and pills every day. If you can't satisfy it, it will become violent. Before Ji Tianqing could finish, the silver moon priestess's scalp went numb and her face turned ugly. Images of Qian Yu's crazy destruction kept appearing in her mind. The more she thought about it, the more she shuddered. Ji Tianqing laughed in his heart, but he still said seriously, Silver Moon Priest, these are all possible scenarios. You must be mentally prepared. No matter what, please remember that Qian Yu is the guardian of the Moon Fox clan. You must serve it devoutly and satisfy all its requests. You must not hurt it. Otherwise, you will be disobeying the ancestors and will be punished by the heavens. In the end, she didn't even wait for Ji Tianqing to finish before shouting, Stop. Young Master Ji, please take it away. The peace and tranquility of our Moon Fox clan was not easy to come by. I don't want our home to be destroyed. After saying that, she threw Qian Yu to Ji Tianqing as if she was throwing away a hot potato. With a wave of his hand, Ji Tianqing kept Qian Yu back into his sleeve and into the sword world. He looked at the silver moon priest with a face full of regret and said in a helpless tone, Sigh, Silver Moon Priest, it seems that your faith is not devout enough. I've read in books that there are many ancient races that worship certain gods. Every year, they will hold a sacrifice to the gods. In order to show their devout faith, not only did they spend a lot of effort, they even used up the entire clan's financial resources to hold a sacrifice. In fact, they would even choose a few virgin boys and girls, kill them and sacrifice them to the gods. No, no, no. Absolutely not. The Silver Moon Priest's face paled as he waved his hands, Young Master Ji, I've also heard of those legends. They are all ancient and evil races. The gods they believed in were evil gods. Our Moon Fox clan does not fight with the world and yearns for peace and tranquility. We would never do such a thing. You should take Qian Yu away. At the end, the Silver Moon Priest's tone was full of helplessness. His heart was already dead. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and pointed to the people outside the temple. He asked, How do you plan to explain this to the people? This. The Silver Moon Priest was speechless again and fell into silence. Ji Tianqing said seriously, isn't that simple? Just pass on what I said to everyone, word for word. The people of the Moon Fox clan have been worshipping the ancestors for generations. Their devout faith has touched the ancestors and made them manifest. The descendants of the ancestors have come to the mortal world and come to the Moon Summoning Mountain to retrieve the Moon Summoning Divine Stone. This means that the ancestors have received everyone's faith. However, the ancestors will bless the Moon Fox clan to be peaceful and prosperous. After a few hundred years, the descendants of the ancestors will grow into the new gods and protect the Moon Fox clan forever. After he finished speaking, there was silence in the temple. The Silver Moon Priest and the 4 silver-armored guards all stared at him with their mouths agape, stunned on the spot. Jiu was also taken aback. She covered her mouth and laughed. She even sent a telepathic message to Ji Tianqing. Tianqing, you were acting like a preacher in the theocracy just now. Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes and asked, are you saying that I'm a swindler? Ahem. Jiu glared at him and said seriously, don't mention the word swindler. It is taboo in the theocracy. Ji Tianqing just remembered that martial god Taihao was the Lord God of the 6 kingdoms. The theocracy had sent many preachers to spread the name of the Lord God in the various kingdoms and guide the people to worship the Lord God. The word swindler was full of negative connotations and it was indeed damaging to martial god Taihao's reputation. At this time, the Silver Moon Priest weighed the pros and cons for a moment before nodding his head. Now that things have come to this, we can only do as young Master Ji says. Sigh. The Silver Moon Priest stared at the 4 silver-armored guards and ordered, don't you dare say a word about what happened just now. Otherwise, I will punish you according to the rules of the tribe. The 4 silver-armored guards kept quiet out of fear. They quickly bowed and said, yes, young master. The Silver Moon Priest was relieved. Surrounded by the 4 silver-armored guards, she walked out of the temple. Ji Tianqing and Jiu looked at each other and followed the Silver Moon Priest out of the temple. As soon as they reached the gate of the temple, they were surrounded by more than 200 Moon Fox tribesmen. The Moon Fox clansmen were all agitated and filled with righteous indignation. Many of them were waving their fists and shouting, asking the Silver Moon Priest to punish the bastard who blasphemed the Lord God. The Silver Moon Priest waved her hand and signaled for everyone to quiet down. Then, she said solemnly, what happened just now was not because someone offended the Lord God. It was because the Lord God had manifested himself. It was the piety of the Moon Fox tribesmen that moved the Lord God and caused the miracle to happen. This is a joyous occasion. The descendant of the Lord God has come to the mortal world and come to our moon gathering mountain. Although she said it was a joyous occasion, she could not bring herself to smile. The Moon Fox tribesmen listened carefully to the Silver Moon Priest's words and were enlightened. After the Silver Moon Priest finished speaking, the people were even more surprised. They all cheered and clapped their hands in joy. In fact, many emotional people even knelt down to worship the temple in an extremely pious manner. Everyone wanted to see for themselves what the descendant of the Lord God looked like. Chapter 1650. The members of the Moon Fox clan were cheering and praying to the temple, deeply grateful for its help. The simple people danced and sang excitedly. They were discussing how to hold a grand banquet to celebrate this joyous occasion. The Silver Moon Priest saw this and was so heartbroken that she could not speak. She said a few perfunctory words to the people and hurriedly left the temple. Ji Tianqing and Jiu took the opportunity to leave the Moon Summoning Mountain quietly. The two of them rode on the Pegasus and flew across the sky as fast as lightning, returning to Taihao City. On the way back, Jiu kept looking at Ji Tianqing with a strange expression and snickered from time to time. Ji Tianqing sat upright on the back of the Pegasus. He originally wanted to maintain a straight face and maintain a serious appearance. But after Jiu glanced at him a few more times, he could not hold it in anymore. Jiu, why do you keep looking at me? Is there something on my face? Jiu covered her mouth and snickered again. There was a cunning look in her big bright eyes. I'm thinking, are you still the Tianqing I know? What do you mean? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. Jiu counted with her fingers and said, I'm thinking, what made an honest, kind, and principled young genius become a cunning and scheming villain? I don't know what you're talking about. Ji Tianqing shook his head and looked away. Jiu turned around and stared into his eyes. She smiled and said, actually, you didn't know the relationship between Qian Yu and the Moon Fox tribe at first. And you weren't sure if Qian Yu was the descendant of the Moon Fox tribe's ancestor. You saw that the divine stone of the moon was extraordinary and contained powerful divine power. It was very beneficial to Qian Yu, so you deliberately made up a lie. You retreated in order to advance and deliberately said that you wanted to keep Qian Yu in the Moon Fox tribe. When the Silver Moon priest agreed, you deliberately threatened her and forced her to give up the divine stone of the moon and let you and Qian Yu go. Humph, the Moon Fox tribe is simple and kind. They are not good at scheming. You can fool them, but you can't fool me. The Silver Moon priest was shocked by the series of events, and his mind was unstable. That was why he fell into your trap. When she wakes up, she'll definitely settle the score with you. After hearing Jiu's words, Ji Tianqing had no choice but to face reality. He smiled awkwardly and said, all right, I can't hide anything from you. You are really smart. However, by the time the Silver Moon priestess comes looking for me, I will already be long gone from God's kingdom. Where can she find me? Jiu pouted and said worriedly, if the Silver Moon priestess can't find you, she will definitely go to the 100 Tribes Alliance to ask for an explanation. At that time, this matter will alarm God Father. If Father God knows that I brought you to the Moon Fox clan and caused this matter, he will definitely punish me and forbid me to go to the Moon Fox clan again. Ji Tianqing revealed an apologetic look and comforted her, I'm really sorry about this matter, but you are the Divine Lord's most beloved little princess, he won't be too harsh on you. Jiu was still a little unhappy. She pouted and said, but, I can't go to the Moon Fox clan to taste the moon scar pastries anymore. That's simple. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said seriously, in the future, when I travel the world, if I come across any delicious food, I will bring back 100 servings as compensation. Yes, that's a good idea. Jiu smiled and nodded, Tianqing, you promised me, you can't go back on your words. Don't worry, I won't lie to you. Ji Tianqing smiled and patted her head gently. Jiu pouted and said unhappily, humph. Don't touch my head, do you think I'm a child? I'm much older than you. Alright. Ji Tianqing nodded and couldn't help but reach out and touch her head a few more times. Jiu stared at him speechlessly and pouted, pretending to be angry. Ji Tianqing smiled even more happily. 2 hours later, the Pegasus returned to Taihao City and landed in Rui Palace. Ji Tianqing returned to his residence and entered a secret chamber to meditate. As he meditated, he released his consciousness from time to time to check on Qian Yu's situation. Qian Yu had been sleeping in peaceful Soil City in the Sword World. The size of the divine moon stone had shrunk slightly, but it still emitted a mysterious silver light and fluctuated with powerful divine power. Qian Yu's bloodline and soul had fused with the divine stone's power and were rapidly strengthening. Ji Tianqing could vaguely sense that Qian Yu would soon break through to the primordial spirit realm. And the divine power contained in the divine moon stone would allow it to reach the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm or even higher. That divine moon stone contains terrifying divine power. Other spiritual beasts and human warriors can't devour and refine it, but Qian Yu can refine it. However, Qian Yu was able to refine it without a hitch. The energy fluctuations and attributes of the summoning moon divine stone were perfectly compatible with it. From the looks of it, I didn't lie to the Silver Moon priest. Qian Yu really has the bloodline of the Moon Fox clan's ancestor. Originally, he had planned to ask the Silver Moon Priest about the Moon Fox clan's ancestor. But the Silver Moon Priest was in a terrible mood and he didn't want to embarrass himself, so he left quietly. Now that he had nothing to do, he drove his primordial spirit into Kenshin's tomb and entered the Heavenly Sutra chamber through the first tombstone. He browsed through the books in the Heavenly Sutra chamber, looking for information related to the Moon Fox clan. Hard work pays off. He spent half a day searching through thousands of ancient books and finally found a book related to the Moon Fox clan. This ancient book mentioned the Moon Fox clan, but it was only a brief introduction of about 1,000 words. According to the book, the Moon Fox clan was one of the ancient clans. They had once prospered and established a huge empire. A portion of the Moon Fox clan's bloodline originated from the ancient divine beast, the Sky Fox. Therefore, the Moon Fox clan viewed the Sky Fox as their ancestor and worshipped it devoutly. The Sky Fox had always protected the Moon Fox clan and taught them many martial arts and spells. That was why the Moon Fox clan prospered. However, in the ancient war that happened 30,000 years ago, the Sky Fox clan participated in the war and fell one after another. The Moon Fox clan also followed their ancestor to participate in the ancient war. In the end, they suffered a crushing defeat and were almost exterminated. In the tens of thousands of years after that, the Sky Fox clan's bloodline gradually withered and it was difficult to pass down the bloodline of the Sky Fox clan. The Moon Fox clan also became weaker and was bullied and ostracized by other clans. They had no choice but to move from place to place. More than 1,000 years ago, the Sky Fox clan completely disappeared. The Moon Fox clan lost their last hope and their situation became even more miserable and helpless. They encountered danger several times and were almost exterminated. Fortunately, martial god Taihao was merciful and saved the Moon Fox clan. He settled them in the Heavenly Kingdom and allowed the Moon Fox clan to survive. When Ji Tianqing finished reading the contents of the book, he understood the whole story. But a question popped up in his mind and he couldn't get rid of it. Since the Sky Fox clan disappeared more than 1,000 years ago, why did it disappear without a trace? Then why did it appear 100 years ago? And why did it appear in the Tianxian continent? Chapter 1651. Ji Tianqing could not figure out the Heavenly Fox clan for the time being, so he had to put it aside for the time being. He calmed down and cultivated, silently improving his strength. Now that he had reached the peak of the 7th level of the Essence Soul Realm, he could reach the 8th level of the Essence Soul Realm as long as he broke through the bottleneck. He wanted to use the majestic spiritual energy and divine power of the Divine Kingdom to break through the bottleneck of the realm. However, the Essence Soul Realm was already an unfathomable realm of martial arts. How difficult was it to break through the bottleneck? Ji Tianqing cultivated in seclusion in the secret chamber for 6 consecutive days, but he still could not break through the bottleneck. These 6 days of cultivation only deepened his cultivation and strengthened his martial arts foundation. Other than that, he did not gain anything. Until the morning of the 7th day, a guard came to the secret chamber and knocked on the door. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to end his cultivation and get up to walk out of the secret chamber. He saw 2 people standing at the door of the secret chamber. One of them was the guard, and the other was Jiu. Jiu was wearing a light green dress and exquisite hair accessories on her head. She looked exceptionally cute. However, her expression and eyes were not relaxed at all. There was even a hint of worry. Jiu, why are you looking for me? Ji Tianqing greeted her. Jiu hurriedly pulled him out and explained as they walked, Tianqing, the Silver Moon Priestess has indeed come to Taihao City. She is now in the 100 Clan Alliance looking for someone to judge. I just got the news, so I hurried to inform you. Before the people of the 100 Races Alliance begin their investigation, you should hide first. Then she added, of course, this is not because I am afraid of trouble. I just don't want to get involved in unnecessary trouble. Furthermore, the Heavenly Fox clan is so pure and kind. I don't want to hurt the Silver Moon Priestess. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. Yes, I have already planned and mentally prepared for this. Since the Silver Moon Priestess is here, it is time for me to leave. Seeing that he had no intention of resisting, Jiu heaved a sigh of relief and said, Tianqing, go pack up. I will wait for you here. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a smile, I don't have anything to pack. I can set off now. Alright, then I'll send you to the space-time tunnel now. Jiu ordered the guards to prepare a carriage. When the two of them walked into the courtyard, an exquisite and luxurious large carriage had already stopped in front of them. This carriage was Jiu's personal carriage. It was incomparably luxurious and noble. It was pulled by 4 spotlessly white Pegasi. The coachman was the captain of the imperial bodyguards. After Ji Tianqing and Jiu boarded the carriage, the coachman drove the carriage away from Rui Palace and headed towards the eastern district. About half an hour later, the carriage passed through a dozen streets and stopped in front of a majestic tower. This white pagoda, which was 100 feet tall, was one of the few iconic buildings in the city. It was called the Space-Time Pagoda. The area within 1,000 feet of the Tower of Time and Space was a restricted area guarded by hundreds of temple guards. Ordinary people were not allowed to approach. This place was heavily guarded, and the giant tower exuded a sacred and majestic aura. Ji Tianqing could vaguely feel that there was an extremely powerful array set up inside the Space-Time Pagoda. It exuded waves of invisible divine power. After Jiu showed the token to the commander of the imperial bodyguards, she brought Ji Tianqing into the space-time pagoda. The two of them climbed up the winding stone stairs. After about half an hour, they arrived at the top floor. The top floor was a vast hall. The floor was paved with rare jade and inlaid with all kinds of gems and divine stones. In the middle of the hall, there was an ancient altar with a radius of more than 300 feet. The altar flickered with a dense white light and exuded a majestic divine power fluctuation. 4 white-robed elders with sage-like demeanor guarded the altar. They were meditating with their eyes closed. Jiu pointed at the altar and introduced it to Ji Tianqing. Tianqing, that is the altar to travel through space-time. In a while, I will let the 4 emissaries open the altar to open the space-time tunnel. Once you pass through the space-time tunnel, you will be able to travel billions of miles in an instant and reach the ruins of God. However, you must remember that after you reach the ruins of God, you must be careful. You must not be reckless. You must find a safe place to stay and wait for the people from Mount God Bestowment to arrive. Then, you can meet them. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. Jiu was relieved and went to negotiate with the 4 white-robed emissaries. A moment later, the 4 white-robed emissaries followed her orders and joined forces to open the altar's array. Suddenly, the ancient altar began to operate and lit up with a dazzling golden light. The sacred golden light exuded a terrifying divine power fluctuation and gathered at the top of the altar. It gradually condensed into a 3-meter-tall golden light door. The style of the light door was simple and sacred. Behind the door was pitch black and incomparably mysterious. Ji Tianqing saw that the space-time tunnel had been opened and bowed to Jiu. Jiu, then I will take my leave. We will meet again if fate wills it. Jiu was stunned. She frowned and asked, Tianqing, are you really not planning to come back? Then what you promised me before, does it still count? Ji Tianqing reached out and patted her head. He smiled and said, the road ahead is long. Everything is unknown. Perhaps I will come back one day. No matter what, I will not forget what I promised you. I will definitely do it. Jiu's mood became even more depressed. She pouted and said, if you go back on your words, I will never trust you again. Ji Tianqing did not say anything. He just smiled and waved at her. Then, he stepped into the space-time light door. Swoosh! In the next moment, the space-time light door flashed with golden light. Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared. The four white-robed emissaries gradually stopped, and the space-time light door gradually dissipated. Jiu stood in place and stared blankly at the space-time light door dissipating. After a long time, she turned and left. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing only saw a flash of light in front of his eyes. He left the boundless darkness and came to an unfamiliar place. He appeared on a 10,000 feet tall mountain. He stood on a huge black rock at the peak of the mountain. A biting cold wind blew in his face, causing his clothes to flutter and his long hair to dance wildly. He looked around calmly and observed the terrain of this area. He saw that the sky was gloomy and filled with endless leaden clouds. There was also a whistling cold wind that wreaked havoc. There was not a trace of green on the bare mountain peak. Not even a small tree or grass could be seen. There was only grayish-brown soil and bare rocks everywhere. The entire mountain under his feet was a withered gray. It was as if there was a dead aura around it. Around the mountain, there were 10,000 feet deep ancient valleys, long and narrow ravines, and undulating mountain ranges. However, there was no green forest or vegetation within a radius of a few hundred miles. Heaven and earth were filled with a thick chill. There was also an ancient and heavy aura. Chapter 1652. Before coming to the ruins of God, Ji Tianqing had done an investigation and understood the situation of the ruins of God. The ruins of God had existed since the ancient times. However, in the first 10 or 20,000 years, this area had been covered by fog. No one could find this place, and almost no one could enter the ruins of God to see its true appearance. About 8,000 years ago, news of the ruins of God began to spread on the continent. Many martial arts experts heard the news of the ruins of God and rushed in. Some wanted to pay homage to the ruins of the ancient gods, while others wanted to obtain the inheritance or treasures of the ancient gods. In short, for a long time, the ruins of God was known as the most mysterious treasure land on the continent, attracting experts of various races to explore. Although a few lucky people successfully entered the ruins of God and obtained great gains and surprises, most of the people lost. However, most of them were lost in the ruins of God. They either died under the claws of the ferocious beasts or mysteriously disappeared. 5,000 years ago, the three divine kingdoms were established and began to intervene. The three divine kingdoms discussed and decided to join forces to explore the ruins of God in order to obtain the inheritance and treasures of the ancient gods. However, the mysterious guardian of the ruins of God appeared. He was the old man of the ruins of God. Whether the experts of the three divine kingdoms joined forces or the divine lords personally took action, they could not do anything to him. With the old man of the ruins of God, no one could force their way into the ruins of God, not even the martial gods. The old man of the ruins of God was as mysterious as the ruins of God. No one knew where he came from, no one knew his strength, and no one knew why he wanted to protect the ruins of God. People only knew that after the old man of the ruins of God discussed with the three divine lords, they made a decision. Every 20 years or so, the three divine kingdoms would select the most outstanding geniuses to exchange pointers in the ruins of God. If anyone had outstanding talent or could catch the eye of the old man of the ruins of God, he would give them a chance to enter the ruins of God. This rule came from this and had lasted for more than 5,000 years. Ji Tianqing stood on the bare mountain peak and looked at the gray sky in front of him. He murmured with a calm expression, "Jiu said before that the divine kingdom exchange would be held on the ancient gazing platform. But the ruins of God is incomparably vast, at least 10 million miles. Where is the ancient gazing platform?" With this thought, he took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to the great guardian, asking for his location and the location of the ancient gazing platform. About a quarter of an hour later, a spiritual light flew from the horizon and landed in his hand. This spiritual light was the jade slip that the great guardian had sent back. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and invaded it, immediately reading the information. It turned out that the great guardian had personally brought the four gods' disciples here and they were already on their way. It would take them about 12 days to reach the ruins of God. As for the location of the ancient gazing platform, the great protector did not know where Ji Tianqing was and could not provide him with directions and routes. The great guardian only told him that the ancient viewing platform was located in the depths of the ruins of God, close to the center. Ji Tianqing silently put away the jade slip and opened the sword world. His divine sense extended into the city lord's manor of peaceful soil city. In a dimly lit secret room, there were 2 futons made of spiritual jade and a wide bed made of ice jade. A young man in a black robe with a cold face was lying on the ice jade bed, quietly sleeping. On the futon not far away, a young woman in a white Taoist robe with 2 ponytails sat upright. Without a doubt, these 2 people were Ji Bai and Shohei. When Ji Tianqing returned to the God-Sealing Mountain, Shohei brought the severely injured and unconscious Ji Bai to the foot of the mountain to heal. Before Ji Tianqing went to the vast divine kingdom, he found Shohei and Ji Bai and asked them to enter the sword world to recuperate. This way, the 2 of them would not be separated from him. During this period of time, Shohei and Ji Bai had been healing in the secret room and had never taken the initiative to call him. Shohei, how is Ji Bai's situation? Ji Tianqing asked Shohei via voice transmission. Shohei, who was meditating, quickly ended his cultivation and replied via voice transmission, Master, Ji Bai's injuries are no longer serious. He will wake up in 2 days at most. Hearing her words, Ji Tianqing was relieved. Thus, he changed the topic and asked, Shohei, have you ever heard of the ruins of God? Shohei was startled for a moment, then nodded with a solemn expression, Of course I've heard of it. That is the most mysterious forbidden area on the continent. It is said that the ancient gods are buried there. Master, could it be that you have already arrived at the ruins of God? Ji Tianqing slightly nodded, That's right, I am currently in the ruins of God. Shohei revealed a worried expression and said without hesitation, Master, the ruins of God is filled with danger and unfathomable dangers. Master, please release Shohei to protect your safety. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then opened the exit of the sword world. Shwa! With a flash of light, Shohei left the sword world and appeared in front of him. Shohei greets Master. Shohei bowed respectfully to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, Shohei, have you heard of the ancient gazing platform? Shohei calmly shook his head and explained, Shohei has only heard of the great name of the ruins of God, but I have never been here. All right. Then we can only slowly explore. Ji Tianqing said without changing his expression. Then, he took Shohei and flew into the sky, flying towards the east as fast as lightning. He sped through the sky, and Shohei followed behind him 1,000 feet away, using a secret technique to hide his aura and tracks. On the surface, it seemed that only Ji Tianqing was traveling alone. Ji Tianqing understood that Shohei wanted to protect him in the dark so that it would be easier for him to move. Unknowingly, 10 hours had passed. It was night time, and the pitch-black night shrouded the world. The lead clouds in the sky were thicker, and the biting cold wind was more raging. Ji Tianqing flew for more than 60,000 kilometers, crossing countless gray mountains and desolate valleys. He did not encounter anyone along the way, nor did he encounter any danger. However, he knew in his heart that this should be the periphery of the ruins of God, which was relatively safe. The truly dangerous area was in the depths of the ruins of God. At this moment, a dazzling light suddenly lit up in the pitch-black sky in front of him. That dazzling light was colorful and spread out in the shape of a fan in the pitch-black night sky. At the end of the sky, that dazzling light was like an extremely small light spot. It gradually spread out, forming a huge light shadow. The light shadow stretched across the high night sky and did not dissipate for a long time. It continued to change into different halos and appearances. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing, who was flying and hurrying on his way, immediately raised his eyebrows. "This is a phenomenon of heaven and earth?" Of course, he could see that it was a phenomenon of heaven and earth caused by some powerful divine object. Even though he was very far away, he could vaguely feel a trace of faint divine power fluctuation. Looking at the source of the light beam, it seems to be in the depths of the ruins of God. I don't know what happened, but it actually caused such a shocking phenomenon of heaven and earth that can be seen from hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Chapter 1653. If it were anywhere else, even if a phenomenon of heaven and earth appeared, Ji Tianqing would not associate it with the birth of a divine object. However, this was the ruins of God, the most mysterious forbidden land on the continent. It was also the #1 treasure land. This area was said to be the mausoleum of the ancient gods, and countless divine objects and relics were buried there. In the entire Shenwu continent, if there was a place where a divine object was most likely to appear, it would undoubtedly be here. Thus, Ji Tianqing increased his flying speed and flew in the direction of the colorful light. Shohei also saw the dazzling light in the night sky and could tell that it was a special phenomenon of heaven and earth. There was no need for Ji Tianqing to explain. She could also guess what Ji Tianqing was thinking, so she sped up and followed him. Very quickly, another few hours passed. By the time dawn arrived, the five-colored dazzling light in the sky had gradually dissipated. However, Ji Tianqing had identified the direction and estimated the approximate distance. He was about 70 to 80,000 miles away from the source of the colorful light. He would arrive in 12 to 14 hours. The colorful light has already dissipated. There are only two possibilities. Either the divine object has been taken away, or the divine object has gone into hibernation. No matter what the result was, he wanted to rush over as soon as possible to investigate. However, Ji Tianqing had already left the periphery of the ruins of God and entered the depths of the ruins of God. He had only flown a few thousand miles away. Just as he flew over a deep valley, he was attacked by a ferocious beast. It was a giant snake that had cultivated for more than 1,000 years. It had already evolved into an evil dragon. Its body was 1,000 feet long, and its entire body was covered in grayish-brown and dark silver scales. There were also two dark red malignant tumors on its forehead. It had been lurking in the valley the whole time. When Ji Tianqing flew over the valley, it brazenly launched an attack. The poisonous mist that covered the sky and the earth, mixed with more than a dozen water columns formed by poisonous liquid, enveloped Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong. He decisively released his magic power and condensed a layer of magic power shield to protect himself. Bang! 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 Amidst a series of muffled sounds, more than a dozen black water pillars struck him, and the dark green poisonous mist also enveloped him. The terrifying force of the impact sent him flying thousands of meters away. He smashed into a mountain peak on the left side of the valley, causing rocks and dust to fly up into the air. The WIRM's strength had already reached the 9th firmament essence spirit realm. It was not far from the tribulation transcendence realm. Once it broke through to the tribulation realm and successfully survived the first heavenly tribulation, the malignant tumor on its head would turn into dragon horns. It would also transform and successfully evolve into a flood dragon. Roar! After the evil flood dragon blasted Ji Tianqing away, it let out an excited roar. Its figure flashed and rushed towards Ji Tianqing. It opened its bloody mouth and bit down viciously. However, just as it rushed in front of Ji Tianqing, several dazzling sword lights lit up in the sky from the side. Swish! Swish! 6 huge icy blue sword lights exploded with unstoppable power, and with lightning speed, they ruthlessly slashed the evil dragon's body. With a series of muffled bangs, the flood dragon's 1,000 feet long body was cut into 7 pieces in an instant. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and dark green venom splattered everywhere. The evil dragon opened its mouth and let out a miserable scream. A few pieces of its corpse fell from the sky and smashed into the valley below. Its physical body was killed on the spot, and its essence spirit immediately emerged from its head and flew into the sky. The grayish-brown snake-shaped essence spirit was like a 2-feet-long gray fog. It looked around in panic, searching for the person who killed its physical body. It was only at this moment that a graceful figure appeared in the sky not far away. It was a young woman in a white robe. She held a 3-foot-long sword and exuded a powerful aura. This person was Shohei. When the evil dragon's essence spirit saw Shohei appear and sensed her tribulation transcendence realm aura, it immediately fled in fear. Shohei did not show any mercy. She chased after it as fast as lightning and used a secret technique to kill the evil dragon's essence spirit. Then, she flew back to Ji Tianqing's side and asked in a worried tone, "Master, are you injured? How are your injuries?" Ji Tianqing had already removed his magical power shield. He said with a calm expression, "Don't worry, that evil dragon can't hurt me." But it sprayed out a poisonous fog. Shohei was still a little worried and warned, "Master, you should check your injuries carefully to see if you are poisoned." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "My physical body has been tempered thousands of times and is already immune to poison. Let's continue on our way." After saying that, he continued to fly into the depths of the ruins of God. Shohei saw that his aura was stable and there was nothing unusual, so she followed him with relief. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing encountered danger again. The danger this time did not come from the ferocious beasts. There was an inconspicuous low hill in the mountains that was shrouded in heavy fog. When Ji Tianqing flew over the hill, a terrifying devouring force suddenly came from under his feet. It was as if an invisible hand had grabbed him and pulled him down. Caught off guard, he was pulled into the heavy fog by the terrifying devouring force. Only then did he see clearly that under the cover of the fog, there was a black hole covered by rubble on the hill. The black hole with a radius of 10 feet was like a bottomless abyss, but also like the huge mouth of a ferocious beast that wanted to devour people. It looked rather sinister and terrifying. The invisible devouring force was so powerful that it could almost tear space apart. It was comparable to the full-strength attack of a tribulation stage powerhouse. Ji Tianqing struggled with all his might. He did not hesitate to use all his strength and used his teleportation technique. However, he still could not resist the devouring force of the black hole. He continued to fall and was about to be swallowed into the mysterious black hole. At the critical moment, Shohei rushed over and desperately pulled him out of the black hole and escaped from the fog. After this incident, Ji Tianqing realized that the hidden danger in the ruins of God did not only come from the ferocious demons and beasts. This was the ancient ruins of God, the most special forbidden area on the continent. Anything could happen. After calmly analyzing it, he determined that the mysterious black hole was most likely a spatial rift. Once he was swallowed by the black hole, he would die without a doubt. The incomparably powerful spatial power would tear him into pieces, leaving not even a trace of him behind. After that, Ji Tianqing became even more cautious. About an hour later, he had just flown over a 10,000 feet tall mountain when he discovered a stream of flame in the sky to his side. Within the dark red flames, a tall figure was wrapped in it. Ji Tianqing was immediately alert. He carefully observed and saw that it was a burly middle-aged man with a head full of red hair. Swoosh! The middle-aged man went straight for Ji Tianqing and stopped 100 steps in front of him. "Hey, kid, do you also want to go to Mount Fulong to get a share of the loot?" The middle-aged man sized up Ji Tianqing and asked in a frivolous tone. He was wearing black leather armor. His left hand was on his waist and his right hand was holding a broadsword on his shoulder. He exuded an unruly aura. The people who had snatched away the divine object were the group of mysterious experts from before. Their strength is too strong. The two of us can't get close at all, let alone follow them. We can only wait here for you. Wuxia immediately furrowed his brows and angrily shouted, "Bastard! The divine object that I've been eyeing for more than a month was snatched away by them so easily. Weren't there a few groups of people squatting near Mount Fulong? Could it be that those bastards didn't try to snatch it? Did they just watch as the divine object was snatched away?" The black-armored man explained, "Those groups of adventurers all took action and fought with those mysterious experts for a long time. Unfortunately, those adventurers weren't strong enough and weren't able to snatch the divine object. More than 10 of their experts were even killed. Big brother, look over there. Those are the traces left behind by their fight. They fought and fled in that direction." After saying that, the black-armored man pointed towards the depths of Mount Fulong. Mount Fulong and the surrounding mountain ranges were filled with huge ravines and gaps. There were also several deep pits that were dozens of kilometers in radius. Looking over, at least a few hundred kilometers in radius, it was a scene of devastation. Wuxia immediately turned pale with fright. He exclaimed in disbelief, "The strength of those mysterious experts is actually this strong?" The black-armored man hurriedly nodded and said with lingering fear, "Big brother, with our strength, it's impossible for us to snatch the divine object. There's an ugly shorty among those mysterious experts. He's terrifyingly strong and can kill the three of us by himself." The shifty-eyed skinny man also nodded in agreement and said with a bit of fear, "Big brother, we saw it with our own eyes. Why don't we just give up? No matter how precious the divine object is, we can't abandon our lives." Wuxia's expression was as cold as ice. His gaze fluctuated for a while before he cursed unwillingly, "Son of a bitch. I'll remember this grudge. Don't let me find out their identities. Sooner or later, I'll kill them all and snatch the divine object back." The black-armored man and skinny man nodded repeatedly and cursed with righteous indignation. The three of them quieted down and their gazes landed on Ji Tianqing. The shifty-eyed skinny man rolled his eyes and gave Wuxia a meaningful look. He transmitted his voice and asked, "Big brother, is the little lamb fat?" Wuxia was stunned for a moment before he grinned. "Of course it's fat. It's so fat that it's oozing oil. As the saying goes, what you lose on the swings, you gain on the roundabouts. I can't get the divine object, but I can't work for nothing." The black-armored man quickly nodded and a cruel sneer appeared on his dark face. The shifty-eyed skinny man smiled and flattered, "Big brother, you've become more knowledgeable recently. Your words are becoming more and more refined." Ji Tianqing listened to their conversation and silently observed the situation in Mount Fulong while thinking about his next move. He suddenly sensed that the atmosphere wasn't good. He turned his head and saw Wuxia and the other two surrounding him with sinister smiles. Wuxia carried his palm-sized broadsword and sneered. "Little brother, are you going to do it yourself, or do you want me to help you?" The black-armored man licked his lips with a bloodthirsty look in his eyes. He said with killing intent, "Boss, I think we should follow the old rules and chop him up. Then we'll count the spoils." The shifty-eyed skinny man smiled and said with a mocking tone, "Don't be so rough. I can see that this brat has an extraordinary bearing. He probably comes from an extraordinary family and has a lot of money. Big brother, why don't we leave him alive and extort some money from his family and make a big deal?" Wuxia thought for a moment and shook his head. "That's a good idea, but I don't want to go through so much trouble." After saying that, he rushed in front of Ji Tianqing in a flash. With a clang, he pulled out his treasured blade and placed it against Ji Tianqing's neck. "Brat, you can either leave your wealth behind or leave your life behind." If it were a normal disciple of an aristocratic family, they would have been stunned by such a turn of events. If it were someone with a weak temperament, they might even pee in their pants. Wuxia was used to using this move. He had robbed and killed countless young cultivators. It was a tried and tested method. However, he met Ji Tianqing this time. Ji Tianqing's expression remained calm and composed. Even when a blade was placed against his neck, he didn't blink. His heart didn't waver at all. He even felt like laughing. He. You really are a vicious executioner. You don't deserve to die. Chapter 1656. Ji Tianqing's reaction left Hua Kuei and the other two dumbfounded. They had robbed and killed countless people. Most of the cultivators they had met had made a fool of themselves in such a situation. Some trembled in fear as they tried to curry favor with others. Some cried bitterly as they kowtowed and begged for mercy. There were even some who fled in panic. However, they had never met someone like Ji Tianqing. Even when death was at hand, his expression didn't change. He was still as confident and arrogant as before. The black-armored man furrowed his brows in doubt. He turned his head to look at the skinny man beside him and asked softly, what did his last words mean? Before the skinny man could answer, Hua Kuei shouted with a face full of anger, he said, we're tired of living. The black-armored man was unable to restrain his anger. He glared at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent and shouted, brat. You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. There are at least 800 fat sheep like you who have died under my blade, if not 1,000. Hua Kuei furrowed his brows and stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. He asked with a cold voice, brat, it seems you'd rather die than submit. You only have one life. You better think carefully. Ji Tianqing's reaction was too calm. It made Hua Kuei feel inexplicably worried and anxious. He couldn't understand. Ji Tianqing was only at the 7th level of the Essence Soul Realm. Where did he get the confidence to challenge him? He was a first-level tribulation passing realm expert. The black-armored man and the skinny man were also at the 9th level of the Essence Soul Realm. To the three of them, killing Ji Tianqing was as easy as pie. Ji Tianqing stared at Hua Kuei. The corner of his mouth curled into a mocking sneer. He said with a playful tone, I can take your dog life without lifting a finger. Do you believe me? Hua Kuei was immediately enraged. His patience was completely exhausted. He shouted with a cold voice, brat. Since you insist on courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. As he said that, his right hand erupted with a berserk power. He brandished his palm-sized broadsword and ruthlessly slashed at Ji Tianqing's neck. The broadsword was less than half a meter away from Ji Tianqing's neck. Hua Kuei believed that no one would be able to dodge at such a close distance. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing's neck would be cut off and his head would be separated from his body. However, what happened next left him dumbfounded. Shwa! Ji Tianqing's body flashed and he disappeared into thin air. As expected, Hua Kuei's slash missed. In the next moment, when Ji Tianqing's figure reappeared, he was already standing in the sky 10 li away. His expression was still indifferent and calm, and there was even a disdainful sneer on the corner of his mouth. Hua Kuei widened his eyes in disbelief, as if he had seen a ghost. However, before he could react, a dazzling cold light had already lit up behind him. Swish! Swish! 6 cold and dazzling sword lights, carrying the power to pierce through everything, enveloped his figure. The sword lights came too suddenly and appeared out of nowhere, catching Hua Kuei completely off guard. With a series of muffled bangs, Hua Kuei's body was cut into several pieces by the 6 sword lights. Scorching hot blood sprayed out, splashing scarlet flowers in the sky. Hua Kuei, who was at the first stage of the tribulation passing realm, was instantly killed just like that. The black-armored man and the skinny man were stupefied on the spot. Both of them widened their eyes in shock as they watched the scene in disbelief. They couldn't believe that the valiant and brutal Hua Kuei's boss was actually so weak that he was instantly killed by someone. The most frightening thing was that they didn't even see the person who did it. Immediately after, a fiery red origin spirit flew out from the pieces of Huakuei's corpse. Huakuei was also quite valiant. His first reaction wasn't to run away, but to pounce at Ji Tianqing. Shua! The dark red origin spirit instantly swelled to several dozen meters long and turned into a huge blood-red eagle. It swooped down at Ji Tianqing. He knew clearly that the person who attacked him was someone else. That person was definitely protecting Ji Tianqing, and their strength was several levels higher than his. If he wanted to live, he could only kidnap Ji Tianqing. Huakuei was smart enough and reacted quickly. Unfortunately, the other party was already prepared. Shua shua shua. Another 9 dazzling icy blue sword lights appeared, illuminating the dusky sky and enveloping Huakuei's origin spirit. Bang 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 bang. A series of muffled bangs rang out. Huakuei's origin spirit was cut into pieces on the spot, splashing in all directions. Huakuei died just like that. The other party had only used 2 moves. One to destroy his physical body, and the other to destroy his origin spirit. It was clean and efficient, and so powerful that it made one tremble in fear. The black-armored man and the skinny man finally regained their senses. They were already scared out of their wits. Their expressions changed drastically. Without any hesitation, they turned around and flew away, respectively to the east and west. Both of them were experienced adventurers who had walked on the edge of life and death countless times. In such a situation, fleeing in different directions had already become their instinct. However, it was too late for them to escape. Shua! Ji Tianqing's figure flashed, and he teleported a dozen miles away, blocking the black-armored man's path. You still want to escape even now? You're too naive. Ji Tianqing sneered. He took out the burial of heaven and ruthlessly stabbed at the black-armored man. Piercing sword. A cold star appeared, instantly piercing through the black-armored man's armor and body. In the next instant, a terrifying sword aura exploded within the black-armored man's body, releasing a dazzling mushroom cloud. Bang! The black-armored man couldn't resist at all. His body was blown to bits on the spot, and blood splattered all over the sky. Even his origin spirit was injured by the divine lightning contained within the sword light. It floated in the sky in a daze. Ji Tianqing struck out with his sword again and killed his primordial spirit. At the same time, in the sky 20 miles away, the skinny man was also killed by several icy blue sword lights. His physical body and origin spirit were destroyed by the sword lights, and he died on the spot. In just a few breaths of time, Huakuei and his 2 accomplices died one after another. Even when they were about to die, the 3 of them didn't see who had attacked them in the dark. They died in a daze. In the blink of an eye, the sky returned to normal. Only then did Shohei, who was wearing a white Taoist robe, appear. She waved her hand and shot out a few streams of light. She found 3 spatial rings among the ruins and corpse fragments. Then, she flew to Ji Tianqing's side and handed the 3 spatial rings to Ji Tianqing. Master, these are your spoils of war. Ji Tianqing nodded and accepted the 3 spatial rings. He would deal with them when he had time in the future. Follow me. He instructed Shohei, then turned around and flew into the depths of Mount Fulong. Shohei hurriedly followed and asked telepathically, Master, could it be that you want to chase after that group of mysterious powerhouses and snatch the divine item? Of course. Ji Tianqing said without hesitation. Huakuei swore that the divine item was the divine dragon's blood. Of course I can't miss it. Shohei also knew very well how astonishing the harvest would be if she could really obtain a drop of divine dragon's blood. She didn't say anything else. She used a secret technique of invisibility again and quietly followed beside Ji Tianqing. Before long, the 2 of them entered the depths of Mount Fulong. Ji Tianqing stood at the peak of Mount Fulong and looked at the ravines, pits, and ruins around him. he observed with sharp eyes. Chapter 1657. The battle between that group of mysterious experts and a few groups of adventurers happened 4 hours ago. In the ruins deep in the hidden Dragon Mountain, there were still remnants of mixed dermic powers. However, Ji Tianqing sensed a strange aura fluctuation from the many dermic powers. He frowned in confusion, somewhat in disbelief. Then, he carefully checked again and finally confirmed that his judgment was correct. He immediately revealed a sneer and said in a playful tone, "I really didn't expect to meet them here. They really are persistent." With that said, he summoned his Essence Soul Golden Sword and transformed it into a 10-foot-long golden sword. He stepped on it and sped away. "Shohei, those guys just left not long ago. Let's chase with all our might. We will definitely catch up to them before dark." As he spoke, he rode the golden sword through the sky and flew north as fast as a stream of light. When Shohei saw that his speed had increased threefold, he had no choice but to use all his strength to cast the swift technique to keep up with his footsteps. Master is indeed a rare genius in the world. He is only at the 7th level of the Essence Soul realm, but he can reach such a terrifying flying speed. Shohei was extremely shocked and admired Ji Tianqing even more. For the next few hours, Ji Tianqing and Shohei continued to speed along. The two of them crossed countless mountain ranges and ravines. Along the way, they constantly discovered traces of fighting. Many mountain ranges had collapsed, and countless ravines were filled with gravel. There were still remnants of chaotic dermic powers in the air. Even so, Ji Tianqing could still quickly find that special aura among the mixed auras. Unknowingly, 12 hours had passed. It was late at night. The sky was as dark as ink, and the cold wind howled. Ji Tianqing and Shohei flew for 50,000 kilometers and went deeper into the ruins of God. Finally, Ji Tianqing slowed down his flying speed and put the Essence Soul Golden Sword back into his body. He released his divine sense to investigate his surroundings, and his eyes flickered with a sharp cold light. Shohei followed in the darkness and asked with a voice transmission, "Master, what's going on? Did you lose the clues?" "No." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said solemnly, "The aura of those guys dissipated here. If I'm not wrong, the adventurers who snatched the divine object have been shaken off by them, or all of them have been killed." Shohei was silent for a moment before asking, "Then should we continue chasing?" Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Suddenly, a confident smile appeared on his face. He shook his head and said, "There's no need to chase. We've already found them." "Huh?" Shohei was stunned. After a while, she finally reacted and asked uncertainly, "Master, do you mean that those mysterious experts fled here because they thought they were safe, or because their injuries were too severe? So, they used a secret technique to conceal their auras and hid here to rest temporarily?" Ji Tianqing nodded approvingly and said, "That's right, they are definitely within a radius of 200 miles. Let's split up and search." Shohei responded and hurriedly turned around to fly away. He also released his divine sense to investigate the situation. After about 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing's divine sense swept across a 10,000-foot-tall mountain peak. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows. His powerful divine sense could penetrate the entire 10,000-foot-tall mountain and investigate every stone in the mountain clearly. However, there was a huge rock in the belly of the mountain. It seemed to be covered by a layer of fog, and he could not see it clearly. He. So it's here. Ji Tianqing took out the Burial of Heaven sword. His figure flashed into the belly of the mountain and arrived in front of the huge rock. Although the belly of the mountain was pitch black, his eyes were sharp. After observing for a moment at close range, he saw something strange. There was an obscure mana fluctuation in the huge rock. It was obvious that some kind of formation had been set up to deceive others. Ji Tianqing did not hesitate. He waved the Burial of Heaven sword in his right hand and slashed at the huge rock. Bang! With a dull loud sound, a dazzling golden sword light bloomed in the rock layer. The terrifying power caused the entire mountain to collapse on the spot. A huge ravine split open from the middle, splitting it into two halves. Gravel flew everywhere, covering the sky for dozens of miles. A loud rumbling sound echoed in the night sky. Shohei was alarmed. He hurriedly rushed over and hid beside Ji Tianqing. The huge black rock was also split into pieces. A pitch-black light barrier with a radius of 100 feet appeared on the spot. Pitch-black demonic chi lingered on the sturdy and thick light barrier. It constantly flickered with a dark red blood light. Ji Tianqing stood in the huge ravine and looked down at the light barrier. He held the Burial of Heaven sword with both hands and slashed down again. Broken Moon Sword. He unleashed 100% of his strength and slashed out a huge golden sword 1,000 feet long. With purple divine lightning, it slashed toward the black light barrier. Although the light barrier was a tribulation-level formation, his power was very terrifying. However, the power of his sword was extremely terrifying. Even if it could not destroy the formation, it could still shake its foundation. The huge golden sword was about to hit the black light barrier. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly flew out of the light barrier. It released a black light blade 1,000 feet long and slashed toward the huge golden sword. Boom! The huge golden sword and the black light blade collided, producing a thunderous explosion. The two light blades collapsed at the same time, exploding into thousands of pieces and splattering in all directions. An incomparably violent shockwave hit the collapsed mountain. Instantly, the entire mountain was blasted into pieces, turning into a mighty torrent of earth and rocks that spread in all directions. A moment later, the night sky regained its clarity. The 1,000-feet-tall mountain was gone. Only ruins with a radius of dozens of miles were left. They were covered in gravel and dust. The black shadow flew into the night sky and stood 10,000 feet in front of Ji Tianqing. It cursed with a venomous tone. "Lowly worm, how dare you chase me here? I will skin you alive and swallow you alive." The black shadow was a pitch-black demonic fog that wrapped around a 1-meter-tall child. His skin was dark, and he had a large bald head that was covered with ferocious ghost runes. A pair of dark green eyes flashed with a ferocious light that wanted to devour people. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly with a sneer on his lips. He said in a mocking tone, "It really is you, ugly bastard. We meet again." There was no doubt that the ugly child in the black shadow was one of the 36 demon monarchs, Ghost Child. Ghost Child was furious and full of murderous intent. Suddenly hearing Ji Tianqing's words, his body stiffened and his dark green eyes contracted. After carefully sizing up Ji Tianqing, his eyes flashed with a fierce light. He shouted in disbelief, "It's you, Ji Tianqing." After being stunned for a moment, he came back to his senses. He immediately opened his toad-like mouth and sneered. "Ha ha ha ha, the heavens are helping me. I came to the ruins of God to carry out a mission, and I actually met you. What an unexpected surprise." Chapter 1658. Previously, Ji Tianqing had detected the aura of the demons in Mount Fulong. He was very familiar and sensitive to the demonic aura, which was why he could track the demonic aura all the way here. However, he only knew that the mysterious expert who snatched the divine item was a demon. He did not expect that the demon expert who snatched the divine item was Ghost Child. Seeing Ghost Child full of surprise and laughter, the sneer on his face deepened. "Ghost Child, back in the Arctic abyss, I have always regretted not being able to kill you. I didn't expect to meet you here today. This is good, I can make up for my regret back then and execute you on the spot." Ji Tianqing's left hand was behind his back, his right hand holding the Burial of Heaven sword, exuding a powerful murderous aura. Ghost Child rolled his green eyes and sneered contemptuously. Ha! Little bastard, where did you get your confidence from? How dare you boast so shamelessly? Back in the Arctic abyss, if you had not escaped in time, I would have turned you to ashes. Ji Tianqing's eyes shone with a cold light, and he said in a deep voice, there's no point in talking anymore. Get your demons out here, I can deal with them all at once. Ha ha ha. Ghost Child laughed even more arrogantly, and said in a mocking tone, in just a few months, your strength has not increased much, but your tone is ridiculously arrogant. A worm like you is not worthy of me personally taking action. The few venerables under my command can easily kill you. As his voice fell, 3 blood-red lights flew out of the black light barrier and arrived in the night sky as fast as lightning. The 3 blood-red lights stopped beside Ghost Child and immediately dispersed, surrounding Ji Tianqing. Each blood-red light condensed into a different shape, turning into a giant, a ferocious giant demon, and a 1,000-foot-tall behemoth. Without a doubt, these were the 3 blood gods. Each blood god's strength had reached the 8th level of the Essence Soul Realm and above, and their auras were extremely powerful. However, Ji Tianqing acutely sensed a problem. Ghost Child and the 3 blood gods' auras were fluctuating, clearly not in peak condition. He didn't need to guess to know that Ghost Child and Blood God's sons must have used up a lot of their magic power in the previous battle, and they hadn't recovered yet. This was good news for him. Ghost Child looked at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile and said calmly, Kid, you're about to taste the feeling of dying in despair and pain. Kill him. Use the cruelest and bloodiest methods to make you regret being born into this world. Following his order, the 3 blood gods' illusions let out bloodthirsty roars and rushed towards Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. Swish! Swish! The 3 blood gods' illusions attacked from 3 different directions. The giant unleashed a demonic spell technique, creating a bloody light that blotted out the sky. The giant demon released a grey fog of death, as well as a formless poison. The gigantic beast, which was as large as a mountain, charged towards Ji Tianqing, wanting to smash him into smithereens. Ji Tianqing did not panic in the face of danger. He quickly raised the magic power in his body to the peak. He waved his sword and used his killer move. 7-star sword. The Burial of Heaven sword slashed out 7 giant golden swords that were hundreds of feet long. With rolling purple lightning, they slashed towards the 3 blood gods' illusions. The 7 streaks of sword light and the sky full of bloody light all collapsed, turning into countless fragments that splashed in all directions. Billions of lightning arcs surrounded the 3 blood gods' illusions. They crackled and flashed, dazzling everyone's eyes. The 3 blood gods' illusions were knocked back, and they screamed in pain from the lightning arcs. Ghost Child frowned when he saw this. He didn't expect Ji Tianqing to be so powerful. Not only could he block the attacks of the 3 blood gods' illusions, but he could also push them back. This was far beyond his expectations. 3 useless trash. You still need me to do it myself. Ghost Child cursed with a gloomy face. He immediately took out a long black sword and slashed at Ji Tianqing with both hands. Sky-shattering divine ghost. The black sword was a tribulation-level Dharma treasure of the demonic Tao. It contained a cold aura of death. The long sword slashed out a giant blade of black light that was hundreds of feet long. It fell from the sky and slashed at Ji Tianqing. The giant blade of black light locked onto Ji Tianqing's primordial spirit from thousands of feet away. He was enveloped by the aura of death, and his body was cold and stiff. However, just as the giant blade of black light slashed down from the night sky, it was blocked when it was still hundreds of feet away from Ji Tianqing. 6 icy blue swords emerged from the night sky and slashed at the giant blade of black light. Kaboom! With a loud explosion, the giant blade of black light shattered on the spot. It turned into black fragments and dissipated. Ghost Child was shocked. He turned his head to look at the night sky to the side, and a cold light burst out of his eyes. "Despicable little bastard, you have helpers. No wonder you dare to be so arrogant." His dark green eyes bloomed with bloodthirsty killing intent as he stared at a certain spot in the night sky. Without a doubt, he had discovered Shohei. Previously Shohei did not make a move. She relied on her powerful concealment technique to hide in the dark without attracting any attention. Now that she had made a move, Ghost Child would naturally be able to detect her presence. When Shohei saw that her whereabouts had been exposed, she decided not to hide anymore and showed herself openly. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. She teleported behind Ghost Child and waved her icy blue sword. She pierced out 9 sharp cold glints which enveloped Ghost Child. Ghost Child sneered and his murderous intent rose sharply. He shouted in disdain, "I thought Ji Tianqing had some backing, but I didn't expect it to be a 4th stage realm girl. You're courting death." He apparently didn't put Shohei in his eyes. He waved his long sword wildly and slashed out 10 over pitch-black sword glints as he fought with Shohei. Bam bam bam. Kaboom. The sword glints collided in the night sky and exploded with a loud bang. It lit up with a dazzling brilliance. Instantly, endless fragments spread out and lit up the surrounding 100 miles. A terrifying shockwave spread out like a ripple, causing the surrounding mountains to crumble continuously. Ghost Child's attack was extremely swift and his sword technique was unpredictable. It was extremely strange. He completely suppressed Shohei and forced her to retreat, getting further and further away from Ji Tianqing. After a short 100 breaths, she was forced to retreat 200 miles, but she was still unable to get rid of Ghost Child's attack. She was worried about Ji Tianqing's situation. She was extremely anxious, but there was nothing she could do. She could only pray silently, hoping that Ji Tianqing could block the siege of the 3 blood gods' illusions and that his life would not be in danger. At the same time, 200 miles away in the night sky, Ji Tianqing and the 3 blood gods' illusions were fighting fiercely. Although the 3 blood gods' illusions were very strong and had a tacit understanding when they joined forces to attack. But Ji Tianqing knew the blood gods' illusions very well. He was well aware of their weaknesses and had mastered the power of God's thunder to restrain them. Therefore, the 3 blood gods' illusions couldn't do anything to him and instead were constantly injured by him. In a short period of time, the 3 blood gods' illusions could still hold on. Chapter 1659. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed with all his might. A cold light appeared and instantly pierced through the chest of a blood god. The blood god was a blood-colored beast that was hundreds of feet tall. It was as huge as a mountain and had a very violent aura. However, in front of Ji Tianqing, all of this was just a facade. Bang! With a muffled explosion, a dazzling cold light exploded inside the beast's body. Suddenly, a blazing white mushroom cloud rose and lit up the night sky. The blood-colored beast was blown into countless pieces and scattered in the sky. Seeing this scene, the other 2 blood gods' illusions were stunned, and their eyes were filled with shock. However, they were not worried about the lives of their companions. They thought that with their immortal bodies, they could quickly recover even if they were blown into pieces. However, a scene that terrified them appeared. Before the pieces could gather, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and unleashed an overwhelming white light. The pure white light contained a majestic holy power. It was as if it came from the gods and could purify all filth and evil in the world. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the holy white light enveloped the fragments and enveloped them. The moment the dark red fragments of light came into contact with the holy white light, they were like snow under the scorching sun, quickly melting and disintegrating. In the short span of 2 breaths, the bloody fragments that filled the sky had all disappeared. The holy white light purified all the fragments and swallowed the entire blood god. When Ji Tianqing withdrew the white light, the blood god had completely disappeared. The other two blood gods had never encountered such a situation and could not believe their eyes. "Oh my God! What just happened? What's going on? We have immortal bodies. There's no way to completely destroy us." Intense fear and despair instantly enveloped the two blood gods. They were at a loss and did not know what to do. Ji Tianqing did not stop and attacked with his sword again. Moon-breaking sword. He roared and used all his strength to slash out a giant sword that could shatter space and break the moon. One of the blood gods was caught off guard and was immediately hit by the giant golden sword. Its 10-zhang-tall giant body was directly chopped into pieces by the giant sword and scattered in the night sky. The giant sword contained divine lightning arcs that enveloped every piece of the bloody light and flashed with crackling sounds. It was terrified and subconsciously gathered the fragments, wanting to reform its body. However, the divine lightning suppressed it and prevented it from reforming quickly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing waved his hand again and unleashed a dazzling white light. Whoosh! The holy white light poured down like a flood and covered all the bloody light fragments. In the blink of an eye, all the bloody light fragments were purified and then swallowed by the sky-mending orb. The second blood god's son disappeared. Only the third blood god's descendant was left. It was scared out of its wits and ran away in a panic. Kids too. What kind of a monster is this kid? How can he kill us? As the blood god Sion fled towards Ghost Child, it roared in shock in its heart. If it had not seen it with its own eyes, it would not have believed it. Whoosh! The blood god turned into a ray of bloody light and cut through the night sky as fast as lightning. Soon, it flew hundreds of miles away. It had already seen Ghost Child. He was more than 100 miles away and was fighting fiercely with Shohei. It thought that in 2 more breaths, it would be able to escape to Demon Lord Ghost Child's side. Then, it would be safe. However, that short 100 miles was a moat that it could never cross. Die! A cold, murderous shout suddenly sounded from behind it. Then, a giant golden sword that was hundreds of feet long slashed down from the sky. Boom! With a muffled sound, the blood god was hit by the giant sword and its body collapsed into pieces. Before it could reform, a holy white light poured down and drowned the pieces of its body. Therefore, it also lost consciousness and disappeared on the spot. Ji Tianqing used the heaven-mending orb to kill 3 blood gods in a row. It could be said that it was clean and efficient. After the heaven-mending orb devoured the 3 blood gods, its power increased a little and it returned to calm. Ji Tianqing looked up at the night sky in the distance. Then, he used the divine concealment step and went invisible. When he came close, he saw that Shohei was in a bad situation. She was being beaten back by Ghost Child and could only hold on tenaciously. Even so, she was still injured. There were already 5 wounds on her body, and her white robe was dyed red with blood. Her long hair was draped over her shoulders, and her body was covered in blood. However, her expression was still firm and cold. She gritted her teeth and waved her sword without saying a word. She used all kinds of secret techniques to block Ghost Child's wild attacks. Suddenly, Ghost Child caught a flaw in her defense and decisively slashed out a few light blades with his sword. He waved his palm and shot out a ball of blood fire. Shohei was about to be hit by the light blades and blood fire. She was about to be injured. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing turned invisible and rushed to Ghost Child's side. He raised his left palm and released his trump card. God-slaying spear. Endless golden divine flames spewed out of his left palm and condensed into a 10-meter-long divine spear. Whoosh! The divine spear pierced through the night sky and disappeared in a flash. It carried the power to destroy everything and stabbed at Ghost Child. At such a close distance, the divine spear was as fast as the aurora. Ghost Child could not dodge it at all. Boom! With a muffled sound, the god-slaying spear pierced through Ghost Child's chest. The god-slaying spear carried a terrifying force and pushed Ghost Child back more than 10 miles. With a bang, he was nailed to a mountain peak. The extreme pain caused Ghost Child's face to contort as he roared and wailed miserably. Before he could break free, the god-slaying spear exploded again, turning into golden divine flames that covered the sky and earth. Boom! Suddenly, a ball of golden divine flames exploded and swept across the sky for dozens of miles. The entire mountain was blown to pieces and scattered in the night sky. It did not disappear for a long time. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky and stared fiercely at the flying ashes in the sky. He released his divine sense to search for traces of Ghost Child. Although Ghost Child's figure had disappeared, he knew very well that Ghost Child was one of the 36 demon monarchs and would not die so easily. Shohei finally heaved a sigh of relief. He did not have time to check on his injuries and hurriedly flew to Ji Tianqing's side. "Master, have you taken care of the 3 blood gods?" Ji Tianqing did not speak. He just nodded silently. Shohei was shocked and encouraged. He looked around with sharp eyes and asked, "Is Ghost Child dead?" Before Ji Tianqing could reply, a sneer that sounded like a night owl rang out in the night sky behind the two of them. Her. Just the two of you reptiles also want to kill this sovereign? What wishful thinking. Chapter 1660. Hearing that vicious sneer, Ji Tianqing and Shohei turned their heads at the same time. They saw a black shadow floating in the night sky 1,000 feet behind them. A ball of black demon chi enveloped a giant more than 30 feet tall. That giant was Ghost Boy. His body was extremely strong and sturdy, and his face was particularly ferocious. On his chest and abdomen, there was a hole the size of a water tank. It was transparent from front to back, and his internal organs and bones could be seen clearly. There was no doubt that Ghost Boy could not withstand the terrifying power of the god-slaying spear. His chest was blown up and he was seriously injured. However, his vitality was abnormally strong. Even though he was seriously injured, his physical body did not die. He tenaciously held on and stared at Ji Tianqing with resentment. His body was filled with powerful killing intent. Ji Tianqing looked at him with a solemn expression. He sent a voice transmission to Shohei, "Ghost Child is too strong. We must be careful. We can't rush things." Shohei nodded silently and replied, "I understand." After saying that, her figure quietly disappeared and hid in the darkness, waiting for an opportunity to move. Ji Tianqing faced Ghost Boy directly. His momentum was not weak at all. He sneered and said, "Ghost Boy, the taste of that spear just now was not bad, right? Those 3 blood gods are already dead. You will soon follow in their footsteps and die with them." Ghost Boy frowned fiercely and stared at Ji Tianqing with a gloomy gaze. He shouted angrily, "Little bastard, I have indeed underestimated you. No wonder Lord Demon God said that you are the nemesis of the blood gods. However, I will kill you today no matter what and get rid of you." The death of the 3 blood gods was beyond Ghost Boy's expectations, but it also made him more determined to get rid of Ji Tianqing. He knew very well that if Ji Tianqing did not die, he could kill the almost immortal blood gods. This was a great threat to the revival of the demon race. As his voice fell, Ghost Boy's body bloomed with soaring blood flames and condensed into a pair of wings. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing as fast as an aurora. Heavenly Slaughter Ghost Blade. Ghost Child brandished his gigantic arms, wielding a black saber that was 100 feet long. He ruthlessly slashed at Ji Tianqing. Suddenly, a giant blade of black light that was hundreds of meters long descended from the sky, bursting with an aura that could destroy everything. The berserk saber chi enveloped the area within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Space was also shackled by invisible shackles. Ji Tianqing only felt the pressure suddenly increase, making it difficult for him to move an inch. There was no way for him to dodge. At the critical moment, he hurriedly used the Kenshin battle robe to form a pair of golden wings to wrap himself up. Wings of the Golden Rock. Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, the giant blade of black light slashed at him, causing him to fall from the sky and crash into the ruins below. Plop! A deep pit was formed on the spot in the ruins that were covered with rubble and dust. Earth and rocks were splashed everywhere. Ji Tianqing fell to the bottom of the pit and struggled to get up. Fortunately, the golden wings blocked the power of the giant black blade. He got up unscathed, spread his wings, and flew into the sky. Ghost Child charged over again. He waved his saber and slashed out 3 black lights that enveloped his figure. At this moment, Shohei finally made her move. She attacked Ghost Child from the side. She waved her sword and stabbed out more than a dozen icy blue sword lights that enveloped Ghost Child's figure. Even though Ghost Child had sent Ji Tianqing flying with his 3 beams of black light, Ji Tianqing was still in the air. However, the icy blue sword lights that Shohei used also stabbed Ghost Child, sending him flying back and crashing into a mountain peak more than 10 kilometers away. Shohei's strength was only 2 levels lower than Ghost Child's. It was enough to threaten his life. A few hideous wounds immediately appeared on Ghost Child's sturdy body, and black demonic blood splattered out. The intense pain caused Ghost Child to fly into a rage and let out a hysterical roar. He cursed angrily and brandished his saber, wanting to chase after Shohei. However, Shohei's attack was successful. She did not continue fighting and immediately hid in the darkness. At this moment, Ji Tianqing swung his sword again and slashed out a giant golden sword with all his might. Heaven-splitting sword. The dazzling giant golden sword erupted with a destructive might as it slashed at Ghost Child. Dazzling purple lightning coiled around the enormous sword, emitting crisp crackling sounds, and its might was shocking. Ghost Child did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly brandished his saber and slashed out black lights to block the giant sword. Only a series of muffled peng 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 sounds could be heard as the huge golden sword was defeated on the spot. Several huge blades of black light were also shattered into pieces, filling the sky. Ji Tianqing's attack was easily neutralized by Ghost Child. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned fiercely. He was somewhat anxious. Damn it! After all, I'm only at the 7th level of the Essence Soul Realm. Ghost Child's strength has reached the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. Other than the God-slaying spear, no matter what ultimate move I use, it's impossible for me to injure Ghost Child. The difference in strength between the two of them was a major realm. No matter how monstrous Ji Tianqing was, it was difficult for him to surpass it. Ghost Child pounced over again and launched a ferocious attack on him. All he could do was block and dodge as he was chased by Ghost Child. Only when Shohei took action could he threaten and injure Ghost Child. Both sides fought intensely in the night sky. It was difficult to tell who had the upper hand and the situation was extremely critical. About 15 minutes later, the 3 of them had exchanged hundreds of blows. Ji Tianqing's golden wings had long been exhausted and retracted back into his body. His body was covered in injuries and his clothes were tattered. His long hair was disheveled. Dark red blood dyed his long robe, making him look particularly miserable. Shohei's injuries had also worsened. His massive body was covered in bloody holes and wounds. Most of those injuries were caused by Shohei. Shohei's situation was not optimistic either. There were more than 10 new wounds on his body and his body was stained with blood. Ji Tianqing was secretly anxious as he silently calculated. If this continues, I won't be able to do a thing to Ghost Child even if I join forces with Shohei. At most, I'll be able to tie with him. If Shi Bai can participate in the battle, the situation will definitely be much better, right? Thinking of this, he released his consciousness into the sword world to investigate Ji Bai's situation. Ji Bai was still recuperating in the secret room of peaceful Soil City, still in a deep sleep. Ji Tianqing was about to call out to Ji Bai when Ghost Child suddenly roared. "You two little reptiles, are you at your wits' end? Are you using the same moves over and over again? Since you only have this bit of ability, then you can die." As he spoke, Ghost Child released an earth-shattering black light that condensed into a mountain-like giant palm and fiercely slapped towards Ji Tianqing. Demonic palm. "Little bastard, go to hell." The pitch-black demonic palm carried with it the power to destroy the heavens and earth as it descended from the sky. An invisible majestic power enveloped Ji Tianqing, suppressing him to the point where he could not move an inch. His body was also bent. He gritted his teeth and endured, erupting with all his strength in an attempt to break free. However, his struggle was futile. Bang! Chapter 1661. Boom! An earth-shattering boom exploded, reverberating fiercely in the sky. The mountain-like heavenly demon palm slapped Ji Tianqing into the ground. A deep pit with a radius of 100 miles appeared on the ground, and dust splattered everywhere. The ground within a radius of a few hundred miles trembled crazily, and densely packed ravines appeared. Ji Tianqing was buried in the ruins at the bottom of the pit, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. What was even stranger was that the mountain-like heavenly demon palm did not dissipate. Instead, it turned into a light shield with a radius of 100 miles and sealed the huge pit. The pitch-black light shield emitted a cold aura of death. It was so powerful that it made one's heart palpitate. Shohei witnessed this scene with her own eyes, and her expression changed drastically, revealing a look of deep worry. No. Nothing must happen to Master. In her extreme anxiety, she rushed to the huge pit as fast as lightning and slashed at the pitch-black light shield, wanting to save Ji Tianqing. Boom! Bang! 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 In just 2 short breaths, she slashed out dozens of times. The power of each sword was enough to split mountains and rivers and destroy everything within a radius of hundreds of miles. However, the pitch-black light shield was very sturdy and did not shatter. The power of the icy blue giant sword was absorbed by the pitch-black light shield. Ghost Child did not stop her. He looked down at Shohei from above, and a cruel sneer appeared on his face. He. You want to save Ji Tianqing? This bit of power is not enough. Use your ultimate move. Shohei immediately frowned and realized that the situation was not good. She glanced at Ghost Child and carefully observed the pitch-black light shield. Only then did she see some clues. It turned out that the pitch-black light shield could absorb the power of the sword light and become even more powerful. In a moment of desperation, she slashed dozens of times and actually increased the power of the light shield. This was equivalent to putting pressure on Ji Tianqing and helping Ghost Child in disguise. You disgusting monster, you're really despicable and vicious. Shohei stared coldly at Ghost Child and cursed angrily. Ghost Child laughed even more proudly and said in a contemptuous tone, "Hee, you idiot, don't you think it's too late to see the problem now?" As he sneered, he waved his pitch-black saber and charged at Shohei. Shohei could only brandish his treasured sword and use his ultimate sword technique to fight against Ghost Child. The two of them fought fiercely in the sky. Their silhouettes flashed continuously, sometimes to the east and sometimes to the west. All kinds of powerful spells fiercely collided in the sky, exploding with deafening sounds and dazzling lights. At the same time, Ji Tianqing was crawling out of the ruins from within the pitch-black light barrier. His body was already twisted and deformed. More than 30 bones in his body were broken, and his chest was deeply sunken. Dark red bloodstains covered his entire body, drenching his robes completely. A thick layer of dust and dirt covered his body, turning him into a dark red clay figure. His complexion was extremely unsightly. Blood kept flowing out of his nose and mouth, and his footsteps were very unsteady. He staggered and could fall at any time. The heavenly fiend palm that Ghost Child used was too powerful, causing him to suffer heavy injuries. Fortunately, his physical body was strong enough to withstand this palm and not be destroyed. If it were any other Essence Soul Realm warrior, they would have been killed by the heavenly fiend palm on the spot. Their physical body and essence soul would have been destroyed. Cough cough, Ji Tianqing stood in the ruins with disheveled hair. When he opened his mouth to cough, blood kept flowing out of his mouth. At this moment, the pitch-black light barrier emitted a powerful force that suppressed him ruthlessly. There were also endless blood-red flames, pitch-black demonic chi, and light blades that descended from the sky. Without a doubt, the pitch-black light barrier formed by the heavenly fiend palm was a domain-like array. Ji Tianqing was sealed in the array and had to endure the suppression and attacks of the array until he lost his life. However, he was already seriously injured and his dermic powers were extremely weak. He was unable to resist at all. Moreover, he had already used up all his trump cards. Soon, the blood flames and light blades that filled the sky were about to drown him. At this critical moment, he suddenly remembered that there was still a divine cauldron sealed in his mind. The Heavenly Dipper Divine Fire Cauldron. Back in the Tian Xian continent, during the decisive battle between the human race and the demonic army, he controlled this divine cauldron to release heavenly fire and astral winds that slaughtered millions of demons. Therefore, he did not hesitate to use this divine cauldron. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the Heavenly Dipper Godly Fire Cauldron appeared above the ruins and instantly expanded to a radius of 30 meters. As soon as Ji Tianqing entered the divine cauldron, the blood flames and light blades that filled the sky drowned the Heavenly Dipper Godly Fire Cauldron. Boom boom boom. A series of muffled sounds echoed violently in the light barrier. The ruins within a radius of 100 miles had been scorched by the blood flames, and then shattered into pieces by the light blades. Fortunately, the Heavenly Dipper Godly Fire Cauldron blocked the blood flames and light blades. Ji Tianqing hid in the divine cauldron and was safe and sound. The Imperial Court's divine cauldron is indeed a top essence soul dharma treasure. Even if Ghost Child's array is at the calamity level, the divine cauldron should be able to hold on for some time. I have to recuperate as soon as possible and recover as much strength as possible before the divine cauldron is destroyed. Therefore, he hid in the divine cauldron's dharma treasure space and took out 3 pills from his interspatial ring and consumed them. The 3 pills were the calamity level pills that Hong Qingtian had given him. One could heal his physical injuries, one could heal his soul, and one could quickly recover his dermic powers. After consuming the pills, Ji Tianqing hurriedly circulated his energy to refine the medicinal essence and quickly recuperate from his injuries. The Dharma treasure space was pitch black as time slowly passed. Ji Tianqing focused on circulating his energy and immersed himself in an extremely focused state. About an hour later, the power of the 3 tribulation level pills was fully unleashed, and his injuries were stabilized. At that moment, he suddenly realized that the bottleneck that had been shackling him had loosened. His empty dermic powers surged crazily as his essence soul and body underwent subtle changes. They were rapidly strengthening. This discovery jolted him awake and he was secretly pleasantly surprised. That's great. I've been stuck at the peak of the 7th level essence soul realm all this while. No matter how much I cultivated in seclusion, I was unable to break through to the 8th level essence soul realm. The bloody battle just now stimulated my potential at the brink of life and death. I can actually break through the bottleneck now. The ancients didn't lie to me. Indeed, only in the midst of life and death can one find an opportunity to break through and increase one's strength faster. These thoughts flashed through his mind as he no longer cared about recuperating from his injuries. He immediately circulated his energy to break through the bottleneck. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes passed, his body shimmered with a hazy golden light as he fluctuated with a powerful aura. His strength was rapidly increasing. Outside the divine cauldron, the pitch-black barrier's power was constantly increasing. It constantly released powerful attacks that bombarded the heavenly astral god-fire cauldron. The divine cauldron's surface dimmed as cracks gradually appeared on the cauldron's body. Its power was also rapidly declining. Clearly, the power of this great formation was too strong. Under the enhancement of him and the sword of burial of heaven, the golden sword of primordial spirit had a darker color, and its power had increased by 8 times. Open. Ji Tianqing's angry roar came from the giant sword. The giant sword radiated a holy and dazzling golden light. Like a golden flame, it shot toward the pitch-black sky. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted, shaking the entire universe. The giant sword pierced through the pitch-black light barrier, creating a huge hole in it. Ji Tianqing and Burial of Heaven joined forces and successfully broke through the seal of the Great Array, rushing out of the pitch-black light barrier. Whoosh! The 1,000-foot-long giant sword flew into the night sky and quickly separated. Ji Tianqing appeared and retracted the primordial spirit golden sword into his body. The sword of burial of heaven also returned to its normal size and landed in his palm. On the ground, the demonic array that was 100 miles in radius immediately collapsed. Ji Tianqing looked around, searching for traces of Shohei and Ghost Child. Soon, he saw that a few hundred miles to the north, the night sky was constantly shining with dazzling light. He hurriedly flew over. After a few dozen breaths, he approached the area where the light was shining and gradually saw the situation. Shohei and Ghost Child were still fighting fiercely in the sky. However, the two of them had consumed more than half of their magic power, and their strength was very weak. Ghost Child's injuries were even more severe. His 100-feet-tall body seemed to have been cut into pieces. There was not a single piece of intact flesh on his body. He was covered in crisscrossing wounds. Even so, his body was not destroyed and he could still continue fighting. Shohei's injuries were extremely miserable. His entire body was covered in wounds and bloody holes, and he was completely covered in blood. Half of her body had even been corroded by demonic qi. Her flesh and blood had completely rotted, revealing her eerie white bones. Even though her body was on the verge of destruction, she still relied on her strong will and faith to stubbornly hold on. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's heart was extremely heavy, and monstrous killing intent accumulated in his chest. Ghost Child, die! He roared with murderous intent and suddenly opened the divine eye on his forehead. Divine lightning. The golden divine eye released endless divine lightning, condensing into 100-feet-long pillar of lightning that fiercely blasted at Ghost Child. Ghost Child was not prepared for his appearance and was immediately hit by the divine lightning pillar. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the divine lightning pillar drowned Ghost Child's figure. His 100-feet-tall body could no longer withstand such destructive power and collapsed on the spot. His body exploded, turning into thousands of pieces of charred flesh and blood that scattered in all directions. A pitch-black primordial spirit flew out from the flesh and blood that blotted out the sky. The primordial spirit was about 1 meter tall and flickered with black light. It was Ghost Child's original appearance. He stood in the night sky and stared at Ji Tianqing in shock. He was so shocked that he could not speak. The incomparable shock made him forget his anger for a moment. How did you escape unscathed? The heavenly demon palm was Ghost Child's ultimate trump card, and it was extremely powerful. He was certain that even if the heavenly demon palm did not kill Ji Tianqing, the formation could kill Ji Tianqing and even destroy his primordial spirit. But now, Ji Tianqing had come out safe and sound, and his strength had increased threefold. How could Ghost Child believe this? Even if he saw it with his own eyes, he could not accept this fact. It was too unbelievable, too heaven-defying. Shohei had been worried about Ji Tianqing, and her heart was burning with worry. She had only been able to hold on until now because of her strong willpower and stubborn belief. No matter what, she had to defeat Ghost Child and return to rescue Ji Tianqing. However, she never expected that Ji Tianqing would appear before her battle with Ghost Child ended. Furthermore, not only had Ji Tianqing recovered from his injuries, but his strength had also broken through to the 8th level of the Essence Soul Realm. Shohei was also petrified on the spot. She was dumbfounded. How is this possible? This is a miracle. No, this is definitely a miracle. Shohei looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and muttered absent-mindedly. At the same time, Ji Tianqing took advantage of Ghost Child's daze to use another ultimate move. White Tiger Sacred Sword. His entire body ignited with golden flames that soared into the sky. He merged with the Burial of Heaven sword and turned into a 1,000-foot-long sword that stabbed towards Ghost Child. The giant sword emitted a dazzling golden light and condensed into a mountain-sized white tiger phantom. Boom! In the next instant, the White Tiger Sacred Sword stabbed into Ghost Child's primordial spirit, producing a dull sound. Ghost Child's primordial spirit was sent flying and tumbled into the night sky 5 kilometers away. Chapter 1663. After all, Ghost Child was a powerhouse at the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Even if his physical body was destroyed and only his primordial spirit was left, his strength was still powerful. The shock and impact that Ji Tianqing brought to him was too great, reaching a terrifying level. He didn't dare to tangle with him anymore and tried his best to escape to the north. Ji Tianqing chased after him for thousands of miles, but he couldn't catch up to him. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to give up the chase and turn around to return to the battlefield. In the desolate ruins, Shohei sat on the ground with her face covered in blood. Her ice-blue sword was stabbed into the soil beside her. Her body trembled as she panted violently. She was no longer able to fight. There was nothing she could do. Her magic power had been exhausted, and her injuries were too serious. Her entire body was covered in wounds and holes. Half of her flesh and blood had been corroded by the demonic aura, leaving only her bones. Even so, she endured unimaginable pain. She gritted her teeth and didn't make a sound. Ji Tianqing looked at her miserable appearance and felt his heart ache. He quickly landed beside her. Seeing that he had returned, Shohei hurriedly leaned on her sword and wanted to stand up to salute him. Ji Tianqing quickly waved his hand and asked her to sit down. He said in a heavy tone, "Shohei, don't move. I'll help you heal your injuries now." Shohei didn't say anything. She took out a pitch-black ring and handed it to him. Ji Tianqing saw that the ring was engraved with ghost patterns and emitted cold demonic aura. He asked, "Is this Ghost Child's interspatial ring? You found it among the pieces of flesh and blood?" Shohei nodded and said in a low and hoarse voice, "I have never forgotten that we are here to snatch the divine dragon's blood." Ji Tianqing silently accepted the interspatial ring and activated the power of the heaven-mending pearl. He released a dense holy white light that enveloped Shohei. The holy white light quickly purified the demonic aura on her body, alleviating her pain. In just 10 breaths, the demonic aura in her body was completely removed. Ji Tianqing retracted the white light and released the dark greenwood magic power to treat her wounds. The greenwood dharma power contained a vast amount of life force. It quickly healed her wounds and grew new flesh and skin. After about an hour, half of Shohei's body grew flesh and blood, covering his white bones. Only then did Ji Tianqing stop. He took out a few pills and handed them to Shohei. "Shohei, thank you for saving me. If it weren't for you holding back Ghost Child, I wouldn't have survived until now, much less have a breakthrough." Ji Tianqing looked at her with a gentle gaze and thanked her sincerely. Shohei accepted his pills and lowered his head weakly. His voice was hoarse as he said, "Master, you're exaggerating. Protecting you is my and Jibai's mission. Shohei, your mission is complete. Go and recuperate in peace." Ji Tianqing exhorted as he put her into the sword world and settled her down in the secret chamber. Then, he turned and left the ruins, his figure disappearing into the night sky. At daybreak, Ji Tianqing left the battlefield. He appeared tens of thousands of miles away, hiding in a desolate mountain range. Deep underground, he dug out a temporary stone room and set up a formation. After he was ready, he took out 4 space rings. 3 of the space rings belonged to Huakue, the black-armored man, and the skinny man. The 3 of them had been killed, so the soul imprints on the rings had naturally dissipated. They had become ownerless items. Ji Tianqing opened the 3 rings one by one and roughly checked them. The space in the rings wasn't big. There were hundreds of thousands of spirit stones and more than 400 primordial soul-level pills. Other than that, there were dozens of primordial soul-level magic treasures and a large number of miscellaneous items. Those strange items were basically obtained by the 3 of them when they were adventuring. He didn't know what they were used for. The only useful things were the 2 topographic maps of the ruins of God. Ji Tianqing put the spirit stones, pills, and magic treasures into his ring inside with disdain. Those 3 fellows are really poor to the point of being pathetic. No wonder they rob other than adventuring. They're really vicious. After saying that, he picked up the last black ghost-patterned ring. This was Ghost Boy's space ring. The soul imprint on it was still there. Ji Tianqing studied it for a long time and used several methods to remove Ghost Boy's soul imprint. He opened the space ring and carefully checked the items inside. The space in the ring was very big. All kinds of gems, pills, and materials were piled up like mountains. However, those cultivation resources were used by the devil race. Their attributes were completely different from that of the human race. Even if those resources were priceless, they could only be used by the devil race. To Ji Tianqing, they were all trash. The only thing he was concerned about was a square black treasure box. The treasure box was made of meteoric iron and set up with a tribulation-level formation. It faintly emitted traces of divine power. This should be it. Ji Tianqing took out the black treasure box and carefully observed it for a long time before he started to crack the formation on the treasure box. After 2 days, he finally cracked the formation on the treasure box and successfully opened it. The moment the lid was lifted, a dazzling 7-colored light shone, illuminating the entire stone room. Boundless divine energy surged out of the treasure box, causing Ji Tianqing's blood and qi to roil, and stars to appear in his eyes. He tried his best to remain calm and looked into the treasure box. He saw a fist-sized gem inside. It was a diamond-shaped gem. It was like the most dazzling 7-colored diamond, reflecting a gorgeous brilliance. The gem was sparkling and translucent. It was so pure that it didn't have any impurities. Ji Tianqing stared at the 7-colored gem and frowned. His expression was a little strange. It's not divine dragon blood, but a gem. He finally understood that the so-called divine dragon blood was just Huakue's guess. The divine item that Ghost Boy had obtained from Mount Fulong was this 7-colored divine stone. The divine items that appear in Mount Fulong are most likely related to the ancient divine dragon. They're either dragon bones or dragon blood. Why is it a 7-colored divine stone? Could it be that the ancient divine dragon's corpse turned into Mount Fulong, and the entire mountain's divine power gathered together to form this divine stone? Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows as he pondered. The divine power in the divine stone is so boundless. If I can refine it, even if I only absorb 1% of it, it'll be greatly beneficial. Just as this thought popped up in his head, Burial of Heaven's voice rang out in his head. Tianqing, that's not a divine stone. It's a divine dragon crystal core, commonly known as a dragon crystal. Dragon crystal? Ji Tianqing was momentarily stunned, then came to a realization. So that's how it is. Mount Fulong, ancient divine dragon, dragon crystal. That explains it. Burial of Heaven, do you have any secret techniques that can help me refine this dragon crystal and absorb its divine power? Burial of Heaven replied concisely. This dragon crystal is useless to you. Apart from the dragon race, no one can refine or devour it. Chapter 1664. Although it sounds pitiful, it is the truth. Burial of Heaven calmly added. Ji Tianqing's heart ached even more. He bitterly smiled and said, "Damn it. I was just thinking that if I could refine this dragon crystal, I would definitely reach the tribulation transcendence realm." Sigh, the little black dragon got lucky. This guy is really lucky to follow me. Burial of Heaven did not comment on this. He only calmly reminded, the origin of that dragon crystal is very complicated. I'm afraid the little black dragon will not be able to refine it in a short period of time. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, how is it complicated? Tell me about it. Burial of Heaven explained, in my opinion, that is not the dragon crystal of an ancient divine dragon. After the ancient divine dragon died, its corpse turned into a mountain range and its divine power spread throughout the entire mountain range. After tens of thousands of years, the divine power gradually gathered and combined with the mineral vein and the essence of the sun and moon, finally condensing into this dragon crystal. A true dragon crystal has a soul and life. It also contains the bloodline inheritance of the divine dragon. And the dragon crystal in your hand is formed by heaven and earth. Its essence is more like a gem. Ji Tianqing immediately understood. He nodded and said, amazing. You can even analyze all these things. How does the little black dragon swallow it to quickly refine it? Burial of Heaven calmly said, it has to rely on itself. No one can help it. All right. Ji Tianqing nodded. He entered Burial of Heaven's sword and went to the sword world to find the little black dragon. Not long after, he flew above the 5 elements pool and sent a message to the little black dragon. A moment later, a huge black shadow appeared under the water. The pool water stirred up turbulent waves. Splash! The black dragon broke out of the water. Its 3,000 feet long black body flew into the sky and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. Old Ji, why are you looking for me? Ji Tianqing didn't beat around the bush. He took out the dragon crystal and handed it to it. He smiled and said, you're lucky. I risked my life to get this dragon crystal. I'll give it to you. The black dragon stared at the dragon crystal and sized it up. Suddenly, a bright light flashed in his eyes, revealing a look of deep shock. Old Ji, you actually managed to snatch a divine dragon's dragon crystal? Well, are you surprised? Ji Tianqing nodded and looked at it with a smile. This is incredible. The black dragon exclaimed in excitement. It circled around Ji Tianqing a few times and created a hurricane. After a long while, it finally calmed down and swallowed the dragon crystal. Ji Tianqing kindly reminded him, that thing is not a real dragon crystal. It's just a gem condensed by the power of the dragon god. If you swallow it just like that, be careful not to choke. Don't worry, it won't happen. The black dragon shook its head happily and said to Ji Tianqing, Old Ji, thank you so much. This is the biggest opportunity in my life. After I refine the dragon crystal, I'll definitely become a divine dragon in the martial god realm. Even if I can't, I'll still reach the saint realm. At that time, I'll be able to protect you and help you achieve all your wishes and goals. Ji Tianqing smiled and patted its head. He said, it's good that you have this intention. By the time you reach the saint realm, I'll have already become a martial saint. He chatted with the black dragon for a while, then left the sword world and returned to the dark stone room. Next, he went into seclusion to cultivate for another 2 days. After 2 days of recuperation, his injuries were completely healed and his strength had also returned to its peak state. On the morning of the 3rd day, a spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in Ji Tianqing's hand. It was a communication jade slip sent by the Great Protector. Ji Tianqing's divine sense entered the jade slip and the Great Guardian's voice sounded in his mind. Tianqing, we've already entered the ruins of God. In 2 days, we'll meet at the Crescent Moon Lake in the northeast. We'll be waiting for you. Ji Tianqing put away the jade slip and took out a map of the ruins of God from his ring. He carefully examined it. This map belonged to the Huakue and countless places were marked on it. There were also notes in many places, indicating what dangers there were. After all, the Huakue trio had been adventurers for hundreds of years and had always been active in the ruins of God. They were very familiar with the ruins of God. The ruins of God's terrain was mostly barren mountain ranges, canyons, and ravines. There were very few rivers and lakes. Ji Tianqing quickly found the Crescent Moon Lake and confirmed his location. The Crescent Moon Lake was about 100,000 kilometers to the east. Thus, he hurriedly left the stone room and rushed to the east as fast as lightning. A day later, he smoothly arrived at the Crescent Moon Lake. The Crescent Moon Lake wasn't big. It only had a radius of 150 kilometers. It was like a pale green crescent moon lying quietly among the mountains. Ji Tianqing found a secluded place by the Crescent Moon Lake and meditated to recover his dermic powers while waiting for the Great Guardian to arrive. The next morning, a stream of light flew over from the horizon and stopped above the Crescent Moon Lake. After the light faded, a 30-zhonglong silver flying ship appeared. This flying ship was a high-grade tribulation-level dermic treasure. It was very exquisite and had the emblem of the vast divine kingdom engraved on it. Whoosh! With a flash of light, the purple-robed Great Guardian walked out of the flying ship and stood in the sky looking down. Ji Tianqing sensed the arrival of the flying ship and ended his meditation. He flew into the sky and arrived in front of the Great Guardian. After the two of them met, the Great Guardian sized him up with a complicated gaze. Immediately, his pupils constricted and he revealed an expression of disbelief. Tianqing, you've actually reached the 8th level of the primordial spirit realm. It's only been a month since we last met. How did you break through again? The Great Guardian looked at him in disbelief. His expression and eyes were filled with amazement. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He explained in a reserved manner, I was just lucky to encounter an opportunity. Great Guardian, you don't have to make a fuss over it. I really can't see through you anymore. The Great Guardian sighed with a gratified smile on his face. The faster Ji Tianqing grew, the better it would be for him and the vast divine kingdom. He was happy to see this happen. Let's go. The Great Guardian calmed down and led him into the flying ship. Whoosh! The two of them entered the flying ship and appeared in a spacious and bright hall. Ji Tianqing originally thought that the other 4 god disciples would be cultivating in their own rooms. He did not expect Qin Sangqiong, Song Zhanyu, Wuk Yin and Jiang Ningxue to be waiting for him in the hall. The 4 of them stared at him with different expressions. Young Master Ji, you're finally here. Did you encounter any danger in the ruins of God? Wuk Yin was the first to come forward. He greeted Ji Tianqing with a smile. His eyes were filled with concern. When he saw Ji Tianqing's cultivation level clearly, he stopped in his tracks and widened his eyes in shock. Young Master Ji, aren't you at the 7th level of the primordial spirit realm? How did you become the 8th level of the primordial spirit realm? Did you break through again? Wuk Yin looked as though he had seen a ghost. He was completely stunned on the spot. Qin Sangqiong, Song Zhanyu and Jiang Ningxue only noticed Ji Tianqing's cultivation level when they heard Yin Wuk's exclamation, "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.